Coming up on today's Next Fan Up podcast.
You're such a kiss ass, James. Oh, me and Doc have seen this before.
Your body is not a temple; it's an amusement park during the holidays.
Doc, can you hear that funny noise? That's Jay noting down the time that you were saying that. James and I are the. I always see us as the shining lights of sanity within the madness of this podcast.
Merry Christmas! We're a day early and a half hour more of content. Here we go.
That's how we start! Yeah, baby!
32 super fans.
Where do the reports come from? Did you get an initial?
One Pod Vader.
That's football.
Every angle of the NFL covered.
All that kind of stuff, I get it.
This,
no question about it,
is Next Fan Up.
We won't unleash hell here in December.
Hello and welcome to the lying edition of the Next Fan Up podcast. Hey everybody, Pod Vader here. Lying because, once again, I've left the good old liar there, Mr. Mike Tomlin, in the open, unleashing hell in December. That's something the Steelers never do. They've never unleashed hell in December. They've only said they have. We on this podcast, though.
He's unleashing a smell this December.
It's not a good one. I'm Pod Vader. I am joined once again by two of the regular superfans and Doc, the Gridiron Chef. Hey, Doc, how are you?
Greetings, salutation to the entire, and happy holidays to the Next Fan Up Nation.
Neil is our Washington football team superfan from Scotland. Do you celebrate Christmas? Oh, that's right. You burn Englishmen.
We do. We celebrate the fabulous birth of Santa and his creation of Coca-Cola. So that's obviously the festival we have here. It's great. I would say though, Jay, it's been a sad week for me because we lost one of the great players in the NFL as a character and also as a player, and Kevin Green, who passed away this week. And I've got to say, a very unlucky man, Kevin Green, because his career started in 1985. And I think I'm almost certain it was the same year as Bruce Smith and Reggie White were on the go. And, of course, Lawrence Taylor was still around. And a year, 2 years later, Derek Thomas arrived on the scene. But if you look at the all-time sack list, who's number 3 on that list behind Reggie White and Bruce Smith? It's Kevin Green, 166 sacks. Hugely underrated player, mainly because of those amazing guys who were there around him. But thankfully got into the Hall of Fame before he passed away. And I've got to say, when I was growing up watching the game, he was one of those players you thought, I'd like to be him. I don't want to be one of these little quarterback guys to throw the ball around. I want to grow my hair long. I want to run around looking like a maniac and hitting people. I didn't care if it was my own team players or it was the opposition. I just want to hit somebody. And that was one of those things I remember growing up watching the game, and what a sad loss to the game. And I believe a really good guy and a really good coach. And a big miss. What a player. You always look at this Clay Matthews and people say, oh, Clay Matthews, he was running around with the hair coming out. And I mean, Clay Matthews was a pussycat compared to Kevin Green. Kevin Green was not a man you'd like to upset, I would imagine.
No, well, and James, our Eagle superfan, also a big wrestling fan like myself, Kevin Green got involved in wrestling for a little bit.
WCW for a little bit, yeah. And actually, he coached Clay Matthews. So if Clay Matthews is a pussycat, that's probably on Kevin Green, too.
All right, let's get down to business. First of all, before I even get into some of the football stuff, people ask me all the time, Jay, why is your podcast so long? And I always answer them this way.
James.
One, the reason why this, well, yes, James and Neil, definitely the two biggest reasons why this podcast is so long. But really, the reason why this podcast exists is because we want to present as many different perspectives on the game that you love from the people that can provide those perspectives. The perspective of Neil, the Washington football team superfan, is going to be different than the perspective of James, the Eagle superfan, when it comes to the NFC East, and definitely different than my perspective coming from an AFC East sort of viewpoint. So that's sort of the point to Next Fan Up. So we want to provide as many different perspectives as possible. Now, I wish more superfans were involved this year. We've had less superfan involvement than previous years, but You still hear from Nick, our chief superfan. You still hear from MJ, the Falcons superfan. You still hear from Monty, the Raiders superfan. So we still have, I like to say, 32-ish superfans involved.
Yeah, all right, okay. I have to come back on that. Sorry, there's so many things in that little thing. First of all, it's not me and James. James and I are the. I always see us as the shining lights of sanity within the madness of this podcast. Secondly, I would say you describing yourself as the AFC representative is stretching it a bit far for me. You're not even the AFC East representative. I mean, you're just the Patriots representative. Come on, let's get on with it. And then thirdly, I would say it's definitely fewer superfans and not less superfans. And to round off this this wacky start you've made to this podcast, Jay, I think I would just say that I'm generally right and James is generally wrong. So I mean, that's kind of sums up as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and one other point to point out here is, honestly, we have a game on Christmas. We have 3 games on Saturday. We have games on Sunday and a Monday night game. And I could cut all of those up into separate podcasts for you.
True that.
But instead, what I have done, if you go to our Spreaker.com/nextfanup, there's a player, and it actually has the chapter marks there for you. So you can skip right to those specific points. If there were any useless stats this week, I don't have that segment scheduled this week. I'd give you a chapter marker to that point, and you could skip to there. But in our show notes, I actually have the time codes written in there for you. So you can look at the time codes and skip right to that point in the podcast. I always put the major points. You'll see a Christmas Day game. You'll see the Saturday games, 1 p.m. kickoff, 4 p.m. kickoff, Sunday night football, Monday night football. Those are all marked for you with time codes. So use the time codes to skip around if you must. Because I know there's going to be a few of you that are listening right now on Sunday going, how the hell am I going to get through 2 hours before the 1 o'clock kickoffs? And you don't have to. You probably already skipped this point. You're probably not even listening to this point.
And one further point I'd like to make is, since Doc arrived on the show, James and I have been sidelined. I mean, let's face it, it's like, oh, Doc's here, the award-winning this, that, and the next thing, and then it's, oh yeah, and what are those guys called again? James and Neil, was it? Yeah, they're here. And it's so bad that James didn't even get an introduction today.
I did introduce James. What are you talking about?
He never got a chance to respond, though.
He did respond. What are you talking? He talked about how Kevin Green made Clay Matthews the pussycat that he is.
That was my introduction, and he jumped in because nobody else was asking. I kind of felt sorry for him, to be honest. Sorry, James. I mean, I'm still with you.
Well, James is on the Tuesday podcast that you don't even know exists. So, by the way, you can go and check out the archives wherever you get this podcast and check out all of our Tuesday podcasts. They are the Sound Off or the Not a Week 15 recap, as we also add to the title, and hear what some of your favorite players and coaches or your least favorite players and coaches had to say after their performances over the weekend. All right, let's move into some of the football teams that have clinched.
Can I just ask then, in that Tuesday podcast, when you're saying what the coaches said and what the players said, do you guys try to mime them? Do you do kind of impersonations?
We did that one week. We should do it more often, though. But no, we're actually using the sound from the players and the coaches.
Okay.
From their post-game press conferences. You can hear exactly what they said. Sometimes we do it a little out of context, like Adam Gase this week in our tease. He didn't actually say what he said in response to the question that I posed to him.
That's a good idea, though, because it does save the listener from endless hours of listening to James.
Hey,
teams that have clinched: the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Green Bay Packers, New Orleans Saints, Seattle Seahawks. There are scenarios for the Browns, Colts, Titans, Cardinals, Rams, Bucks, and Washington to get a playoff spot after this week is done. Just to remind you, at least 2 NFL teams have won their divisions the season after missing the playoffs in 16 of the past 17 years. These following teams will not be one of them because they have been eliminated. Those are the Jets, Jaguars, Bengals, Chargers, Texans, Falcons. Joining them this week are the Patriots, Broncos, Lions, 49ers, and Panthers. I do find it interesting. So every year at about this time, there's a lot of teams that are in contention. This year, we sort of pointed this out mid-season. There's the haves and the have-nots, and it seems to be there's really only contention for one playoff spot. There's like two teams not already in a playoff spot that are still alive for a playoff spot, other than your NFC East ridiculousness that you guys got going on there.
Patriots out. Are they still? No, they're out now. They haven't got a chance of getting your wild card.
Yeah.
No.
I literally just said that, Neil. Thanks for listening.
Is this Tuesday? Because if it's Tuesday, I'm going.
We are a day early. Pigskin Pick'em. I got 12 straight up, which was good for a tie for first in our Pigskin Pick'em competition on ESPN.com, which you could still join if you wanted to for the last 2 weeks. I don't know why you would, but go right ahead.
Not a spoiler alert. Not a spoiler alert, Jay, but I can tell you one thing: Doc is not going to be getting that this week.
No,
you don't know, son. You don't know.
The power rankings got 11 correct, which was a very big tie for second. There were a whole bunch of teams that got 11. I actually beat Vegas finally. I got 10 versus Vegas, but lost in my picks pool thanks to the stupid Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, wow.
If the Steelers had won, I would have been a little richer today. Not a lot richer, but a little. And I'm not that rich. Starting today, employed coaches can start interviewing virtually for open head coaching positions. So knowing this, why did the Jaguars and Jets keep their head coaches employed?
Well, I'm not convinced the Jaguars get rid of Marone yet. They got rid of the GM, didn't they, a few weeks back? So I'm not sure if they get rid of Marone, but he might get another year.
But you can't interview for a position that's not currently open.
Yeah, but maybe that's a point. Maybe that's a signal that they're not going to be getting one. But then you look at the Jets and you think, God, they've got to get rid of Gase, haven't they?
They really do. But again, they can't interview for that position because it's not open.
Well, come on, Jay. That's not really how it works, though, is it? I mean, they can't publicly say, "Oh yes, we interviewed." Like Louis Riddick's got a number of GM interviews recently. You're not going to get that from the Jags or the Jets, but they can do the old nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more sort of thing, can't they?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Louis Riddick for GMs. There have been other GM candidates that have been interviewed over the past couple weeks. There is another black candidate, which I'm very excited for, that got mentioned on Good Morning Football this morning, and that is the Kansas City assistant of pro player personnel, Ryan Poles. We know that if we are going to affect change, especially when we're talking about diversity in our coaching ranks, there really needs to be diversity in the front office as well. And there aren't a lot of black GM candidates out there for whatever reasons that might exist. Go back and listen to our podcast on state of race in the NFL, which we did back in the preseason. But Ryan Poles is out there as a candidate, and I would fully suspect – I mean, I'm a big fan of Louis Riddick. I think Louis Riddick should get one of these jobs for sure, but I think Ryan Poles is another good guy. I mean, Kansas City's got a pretty stacked lineup.
Didn't I see Jim Caldwell getting an interview somewhere as for a head coaching post?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good news.
Here's some head coaching names that I've got my eye on. Obviously, there's Eric Bieniemy. Brian Daboll in Buffalo has been getting some press. Some guys that were mentioned on Good Morning Football. Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator at Tennessee, is a name that I haven't heard a lot of people talking about, but it makes a ton of sense. And specifically, we talk about, these guys that have worked with quarterbacks. Well, Ryan Tannehill before he was with Tennessee and Ryan Tannehill after he's worked in Tennessee, I think Arthur Smith makes perfect sense as a head coaching candidate.
Makes sense.
Okay.
You've been mentioning Joe Brady, Neil, and I think Jacksonville would make a lot of sense for Joe Brady, no?
That makes sense as well, Jay. Yeah. I mean, why not?
You know what, Pod, I'd love to hear kind of different philosophy here, because how many great offensive and defensive coordinators have we seen? Going to head coach is a different kettle of fish, and I hate to parallel the food business, but I know some of the best chefs in the world, and you got a good sous chef, a good, good saucier, a good underbelly, then you're a great chef. But as soon as you go from sous chef to master chef, now you got to run the house. It's a different ball game altogether. And I know Bien-Aimé is potentially an offensive genius, but he could just end up being the best offensive coordinator in history if he stayed one. But I don't know as a head coach. I don't know about any of these guys, whether they can take the reins. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. That's why we see so many of them fail. I just want to see some thinking outside the box this year because we got a lot of turnover,
Well, and then on the defensive side of the ball, I think Raheem Morris, there's a lot of talk, James. Raheem Morris deserves the Atlanta job. I think Atlanta needs a complete reset, though. I think Raheem Morris deserves a head coaching job. I just don't necessarily think Atlanta is the place for him.
Yeah, Atlanta is still currently, I think they've already put their list together. I don't know if Raheem Morris is actually on it or not. But they've already got their list of candidates that's been floated around and touted about as far as possible people they want to bring in. So as much as I think Raheem Morris deserves the job, they'll probably clean house. And depending on who they get in there, it could be the end of Julio and Ryan as well.
Right. Hey, James, I'll tell you that a buddy of mine who's got the number one show on NFL radio, he said 2 weeks ago, regardless of what Morris does between now and the end of the year, that he is on everybody's list right now as a top two, regardless of what happens.
He should be.
He's come back from his first stint, 4 or 5 years ago? Who was that with Tampa Bay? He was the head coach. Very young and, made lots of mistakes. And I think it's right. He gets the opportunity, a second chance. He'll be a much better coach now than he was back then for sure. I like him a lot. But of course, it's very difficult to see any team going for any head coach other than, of course, Bill O'Brien's out there. He's out there waiting with no team.
Let him stay out there.
Yeah,
surely he's number one.
I don't think Bill O'Brien's getting if Bill O'Brien gets hired this time around, there's a problem with your ownership.
There's definitely a problem. And, to piggyback off what Doc said about Raheem Morris, there are a lot of defensive coordinators on established coaching staffs right now who were former coaches. With experience, and some of those guys will probably get looked at again. And I'm drawing blanks on everybody's names.
I'm going to give you one because Good Morning Football brought his name up, but I'm not a big Todd Bowles guy. Todd Bowles is the current defensive coordinator at Tampa Bay. I don't think Todd Bowles is a head coach. I think he's a good defensive coordinator.
Again, like Raheem, his first coaching stint didn't play out too well, and whether it was him or just the situation as a whole in New York, it just didn't work out. And sometimes that first coaching stint doesn't work out. Sure. Look at your boy Belichick. It didn't work out in Cleveland, but it's worked wonders here. Sometimes these guys just need a better situation or just a second chance, period, whether it's better or not, to prove that they can actually do this job. A lot of them got their first stints in places that were completely dysfunctional. We didn't know about it until just now.
Yeah. Well, and two other guys, Robert Saleh, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about him, and Don Wink Martindale, the Baltimore defensive coordinator, by the way, not related to the television game show host Wink Martindale. I had to look that up.
I think Dan Quinn's going to get some looks. I hear he's such a likable guy. Players love him. He didn't perform well, but you got him to a Super Bowl and then crap the bed. But I think he'll get looks. I
think Jack Del Rio will be in there. Greg Roman's another one who I think will be getting a shot. And of course, Jay, you haven't mentioned, and that's probably on purpose, but you've got the evil snake, Josh McDaniels, of course, who's let so many people down over the years. He might get another shot.
Nah,
I don't think McDaniels is going anywhere.
Why would
I mean, I've been hearing talk on the Boston talk shows that McDaniels is getting some interest, but I don't think McDaniels is leaving New England.
And what about college
McDaniels
coaches?
is a succession plan.
Right.
What college coaches on the list there, Jay?
Well, I don't have a long list of college coaches, but there's a guy who's acting as a consultant to a team that was a former head coach, and I think he's going to get a second shot, and that's Marvin Lewis. I know you guys don't like Marvin Lewis as a head coach, but I think Marvin Lewis is going to get another shot.
Yeah, it's all right.
And I'm not against Marvin Lewis getting a second shot. I just don't like when his name is brought up as, a legit interview when the entire world around said situation knows that this is a token interview to satiate a rule that certain organizations just don't want to deal with. And his crap fest of an interview that happened, what was it, last year with Dallas, was a sham. And everyone knows it was a sham. At the point he had been away from Cincinnati for 2 years? No one. He was not on anyone's radar as far as someone coming back into the fold or wanting to get back into coaching anything. Look, does he want to coach? Not debating that. He probably does want to coach. But sometimes when when you're at a place for so long, you want a year or two away. Just to maybe recenter yourself, gain some perspective, try to do some, maybe do some other things or whatever like that. And whatever it is that he was doing at the time, he's probably happy with that. For Dallas to dredge him up, and I know I'm making it sound uber negative, but what Dallas did last year was crap. There were any number of qualified, available candidates that they could have interviewed to satisfy the Rooney Rule without having to go to Marvin Lewis. And that's not a knock on Marvin Lewis. He is a competent head coach. The situation in Cincinnati, look, one, you're coaching that division. There's already one team you got to deal with because of the history and the success of decades. And then the Baltimore Ravens in recent history. So you're fighting an uphill battle, period, coaching that division. But for him to last that long in Cincinnati is a testament to his coaching ability. Was it all good? No. Was it, was it horrible? No. But at the same time, don't bring up somebody who no one is checking for. That's what I had a problem with last year.
Just to finish the coaching thing, I think there might be some looks towards Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern, Lincoln Riley, who's he's Oklahoma, isn't he? And has been responsible for a number of quarterbacks doing really well, including the new Philadelphia quarterback, and of course Dabo Swinney at Clemson, who's had a few really good seasons. But they're guys who, it's going to take a lot to shift them out of those positions, I would imagine. And I would say for Bill O'Brien, if he's going to get a second shot, it should probably be a headshot, since the first shot didn't appear to kill him.
Man. And listen, David Shaw at Stanford's always going to be on the list, top of the list, near the top.
Yeah, well, a great, lovely man he is. Yeah, really nice to like him.
Brian Leftwich, I think, will get a look this year.
I don't think any of those guys that you mentioned in the college ranks are going to leave. Take Dabo Swinney, for instance. He's got a chance to become the next Nick Saban, right? He has a chance to cement himself in college football. I think that's probably best for him.
Yeah, I know. But they're always brought up at this time of year, aren't they? These guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's when will Saban walk away? Probably within 2 years, right? And then he can maybe take his place.
You're right, Jay. That's fair.
All right. So before we jump into the pick'ems, because honestly, we're all probably going the exact same route except for Doc for some strange reason.
Just to spite myself.
But there's a holiday approaching known as Christmas, and Doc, I'm wondering if your recipe of the week has to do with the holiday.
No, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna force you guys, get in the darn kitchen, and I just made some, so I smell like a citrus garden right now around the microphone. That 5-fruit cranberry relish, I just did.
I got
25 jars of it. I get requests from everybody because if they're not eating bird, then they put it on ice cream. It is tremendous. That recipe's there. And those Parker House rolls, I've already had to send it to 3 social media influencers. So definitely try the rolls and try the cranberry relish. And if you want any turkey hacks, happy to give them. But guys, stick to the old recipes, man. If you want an appy or a series of appies, ask away, pick a topic. I'll throw one on the air here. No problem. Dips. Got lots of dips.
I think Neil's still waiting for you for that lion recipe.
Lion. Maybe we'll do lion liver stuffed with haggis or something like that.
Nice. Yeah. Nice.
All right, let's move to Christmas Day, where we'll have a game Now, is this game kicking off at 3:30 or 4:30? I keep seeing different times. And of course, on television, they're promoting the pregame, which is starting at 2:30. So I have no idea what time this game is kicking off, but it's sometime.
It'll probably be 4:25, 4:30.
Christmas afternoon on Fox. The Minnesota Vikings are at the New Orleans Saints. The Vikings are 18th in the power rankings. The Saints are 5th. Vegas has the Saints favored by 7. I have some notes on this. The Saints will clinch a 4th consecutive NFC South title with a win, including the postseason. This will be the 22nd game played on Christmas Day since the 1970 league merger. That list includes the longest game in NFL history, December 25th, 1971, when Miami defeated Kansas City 27-24 in double overtime to advance in the AFC playoffs. We are all taking the Saints, except for the Saints fan, Doc, who's going with the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, let me justify, please. Oh, please. All right. Number one, if I was seriously waking up on the other side of the bed this morning, the Vikes have been the Saints. What's the Superman term?
Kryptonite.
Yeah, kryptonite. All right. Now, here's where I'm going to go off on my coach again. All right. We know it took a while. Drew had the worst start of his career. First quarter, pissed it away. Their play calling, every single, well, now let's just pre-establish this. The KC defense last week played stellar. The best defensive game in the defensive backfield that literally they have played all year. And Drew still put up, got 2 quarters in. But I will tell you that Sean Payton did not take advantage of every little blemish that KC defense has, and everybody knows it. The middle of the field, they're horrible. 109, right side middle, 112 quarterback rating. They didn't use Alvin Kamara. So I'm still losing trust in the play calling of Sean Payton. That being said, I just think that why not go against the grain? Because Kirk Cousins, for some odd reason, has the Saints number right now, and there's a certain amount of divine intervention that has happened the past couple of years. Last year, we know what happened first round of the playoffs. Lattimore bumps into his own player. We got 2 DBs out. We put in our third string and second string on the back end, and he throws a 50-yard bomb down to the goal line. And if it doesn't happen, right? And also they got at Drew Brees. They overtook the center of their line, can get after it. That being said, why not go against the grain? Do I think, seriously, the Saints they should win this game handily by 14 points, even without Michael Thomas. But they barely played together all year. They're saving him for the playoffs. It's an entirely different offense, but I think Drew gets his mojo back. That being said, the kryptonite remains. Easy to justify a Vikings win.
Just so you know, in the regular season, the Saints have won 4 of their past 5 versus the Vikings. Mm-hmm. The Kirk Cousins is, that's a legit gripe. In 3 career regular season games versus New Orleans, he has averaged 335 yards per game, 9 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. And he's aiming for his 4th in a row in the regular season with 300 plus passing yards, 2 plus passing touchdowns, and a 105 plus rating against your Saints. So I see it, but I also look at the takeaway giveaways here. The Vikings -5 on the season, the Saints +5. And so I will stick with my Saints pick here.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one because, as James will tell you, it's Christmas night and Kirk Cousins has got the entire church behind him, so could be a big win for the big upset here.
James, what's the injury report?
Yeah, before I get to the injury report, my only thoughts on this game is that hopefully Sean Payton pulls his head out of his butt from the last 2 weeks of how he calls plays.
Amen,
and takes advantage of this young Vikings defense. Wide receivers. Let's start with the Saints. Marcus Callaway is designated to return this week. Traquan Smith has an ankle injury. Michael Thomas will not be available this week. Other Saints showing up include Malcolm Brown, defensive tackle with a calf injury, Trey Henderson, the defensive end, Audris Pete, the offensive tackle, and Carl Granderson, the defensive end. All those players listed as questionable. On the Vikings side, the big injuries here are Kyle Rudolph with a foot. He did not practice on Tuesday. He's listed as questionable. Linebacker Troy Dye is in a concussion protocol and also has a hamstring injury. And other Vikings showing up on the injury report as questionable, meaning they will most likely play, include linebacker Todd Davis, defensive end Jalen Holmes, defensive tackle Amon Watts, cornerback Cameron Dantzler, defensive tackles Hercules Mataafa, and Jaleel Johnson.
That was a lot of names. Wow. Yeah. All right. It's that time of year, I suppose.
It is that time of year.
Right.
Is there any weather concerns here? No, probably not.
It's indoor. I'm glad you brought that up, though, because as we move to the Saturday games, there'll be no weather concerns with any of these games either, because they're also all in a dome. So it does not matter what the weather will be like in Detroit, Arizona, or Las Vegas. They all play inside. We will start at 1:00 on the NFL Network. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are at the Detroit Lions. The Bucs are 8th in the power rankings. The Lions are 29th. Las Vegas is favoring Tampa Bay by 9.5, which seems rather large. Tampa Bay can clinch its first playoff berth since 2007 with a win. Tom Brady is expected to start his 298th regular season game and will tie the NFL record held by Pro Football Hall of Famer Brett Favre, who made 298 starts from 1991 to 2010. Saturday also will mark the 300th regular season game in Brady's career, making him the 12th player ever to reach that milestone. The Bucs overcame a 17-point deficit to win last week. It marked the 4th time this season Tampa Bay has come back from a deficit of at least 10 points, which is tied with the Saints that had 4 comebacks of 10 or more points. For most in the NFL this season, the Lions are without a coaching staff. So this should be interesting. I am going to lock the Buccaneers in. In case you haven't heard the story, apparently the entire Lions coaching staff is on the COVID list.
Good for them.
Yeah, they're deemed close contact with someone who tested positive. Yeah. They're still doing tracing. Bevel, who's the interim, is one of those coaches, along with the entire defensive staff. So even if Bevel can go, they still have no idea how the defense is going to be coached on Saturday.
Matters not.
It doesn't matter.
I think pull Chris Spielman out of the assistant to the president's office, put him on the sideline, and they do better. Hey, why not?
I mean, let them self-coach. I think that would be a fun thing to see. Let's see Matthew Stafford call his own plays.
I think he's been doing that all year.
Maybe. Might as well be.
And not to supersede you, James, yeah, in the injury report, but Carlton Davis may not play. Antoine Winfield may not play. Matt Stafford, regardless of often injured Galladay's there, has still got enough weapons. Hawkinson had an off week, cost me a football semifinal, and he can score with them in the way that. Sorry to segue. The Tampa Bay Bucs have got out of the gate very slow. I don't know why, but why not let him call his own offense? Why not?
By the way, apparently Matthew Stafford, here it is. Matthew Stafford was asked, because he's playing with torn rib cartilage and a busted thumb. Mm-hmm. And he tweeted this out when asked why he's going to put himself out on the football field. And he says, because I'm the quarterback of the Detroit Lions and it was Sunday and I get a bunch of teammates that work their asses off. They fight to be available and fight to get out there and play and try to help us win. If there's any way I can play, I'm never gonna not play. I feel like I owe it to those guys. I owe it to the game. I owe it to this organization, everybody. If I'm good enough to play, healthy enough to play, my ass is going to be out there. I want that guy as my quarterback. And apparently there were a couple of his teammates that retweeted it and said, "That's my quarterback." So Matthew Stafford, good on you. Not necessarily the smartest thing, but hey, I love the passion. I love guys that love the game. That's the sort of thing that tends to be missing these days. And Matthew Stafford clearly loves the game.
Yeah, that's all fine and well. It's just a lot of talk for a team that's going to lose another game on Saturday.
What's the injury report?
It's a good story.
Ronald Jones of the Buccaneers, running back, he is still going to be out with his finger injury and still being on the reserve COVID list. As mentioned, Carlton Davis and Antoine Winfield both show up as questionable. That's cornerback and safety, respectively. Jason Pierre-Paul also shows up as questionable. For Detroit, Kenny Galladay, hip injury. We already mentioned Matthew Stafford. Jamie Collins, the linebacker. Taylor Decker, the offensive tackle. Frank Ragnow, the center. He's going to have some evaluation this week because his throat was broken when they played the Packers a few weeks ago, so he's going to get that checked out. Terrell Crosby and Halapudavati Vaitai, the offensive tackles, all show up as questionable on the injury report. So Detroit's entire offensive line, in case you haven't been paying attention, on the injury report is questionable. Keep an eye out for that.
And no coaches. So, yeah, that should be good. Maybe 9.5 isn't enough. Maybe we need to give
let's get Bob from Dearborn Heights, a truck driver with the UPS. Come on in with a clipboard, Bob. Why not?
Who's the regional salesman in the Ford motor dealerships there in Detroit? They can coach.
Yeah.
Hey, that's not a bad idea. Let's get a bunch of fans together, do a quick fan contest, be head coach for a day.
Hey, the last couple of years of the Pro Bowl, they did fan contest. The fan won the right to call a play for either the AFC or NFC. They can do it for this too.
Yeah, for the whole game.
Detroit.
Never mind one play, just call the whole game.
No.
Adam Gase said it's not that difficult.
Hey, look, let 60 fans win, and each of them can call a play. That's how we call the whole game.
I see what you're saying. Okay, so you're going to have like 60 guys on the ready to call a play. All right, that's not a bad idea.
That's a little unfair. Imagine if you three jabronis were ahead of me. I'd be coming in on 4th and 55 or something.
Yeah, you get to call the punt. It's perfect.
No. Outside of obvious punting and field goal situations, you get to call the play.
Oh, okay. All right. I like that idea. Let's make it happen, Detroit. San Francisco 49ers are at the Arizona Cardinals. 4:30 p.m. kickoff on Amazon Prime only, James. I know you were like, nope, it's going to be available. Nope, it's only available on Amazon Prime.
Oh, man. And NFL.com if you have it.
So, yeah. So, unless you got Amazon Prime, you will not be watching the 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. Not even in the local markets. So,
I wonder how it will be here in the UK. I must check that out.
Not even in the local markets. Now, that is troubling because typically when games happen like this, the local markets still get the game. So if you're telling me folks in San Francisco and Arizona are not going to be able to show this game. And wait, I know the game is in Arizona, but is this one of San Francisco's home games in Arizona, or is this actual Cardinals home game?
No, this would be an away game for the San Francisco 49ers, an away game at their new temporary home. Yes.
Okay, so this is Arizona's actual home game. Got it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The San Francisco, Arizona XFLers are 23rd in our power rankings. The Arizona Cardinals are 14th. Las Vegas has the Cardinals favored by 5. The Cardinals, who will clinch their first playoff berth since 2015 with a win and a Chicago loss or tie, host San Francisco in this second game on Saturday. Last week, Kyler Murray passed for 406 yards with 3 touchdowns and 1 interception for a 127.8 rating and added a rushing touchdown. Murray has 9 games with both a passing touchdown and rushing touchdown this season, and that is the most by a quarterback in a single season in NFL history. We are all going with the Cardinals over the XFLers, except for Doc. But
Josh Rosen's coming in off the bench in the third quarter.
Talking about guys that love football. That guy really loves
basically
football.
Just being added to the roster. Nah, that's not happening.
He's going to have to if he gets injured. If QB1 gets injured, I just see it. Why not? He comes in, totally shocks, and takes away a great opportunity for the.
In all seriousness, though, Doc, you imagine if Rosen had been drafted originally by Kyle Shanahan. You do wonder if his career trajectory would be different because Shanahan is the sort of guy who can squeeze every ounce of talent out of a guy.
Yeah,
except for
I don't know. Listen, he's off a practice squad. He's on a roster. They may keep him around.
Yep.
Right? He's better than their number 2 and 3, probably with some guidance under the aforementioned. Why not?
More talented as a quarterback.
Yeah. He's got a head problem. I don't know what it is, but maybe a coach can shake it out of him. Yeah.
Unfortunately, this move is like 3 weeks too late for the 49ers as far as pulling Rosen off the Buccaneers practice squad into their active roster. Look, for all the praise we give Shanahan and the nice little Band-Aid job he was doing with quarterback play this season, Nick Mullins has basically crapped the bed the last 2 weeks against teams.
He's not a starting quarterback.
Look, I know he's not a starting quarterback. We've seen that. If never more evident, the last 2 weeks has shown he's not a starting quarterback.
I would argue that Shanahan has got a hell of a lot out of Mullins for the talent that Mullins has.
He has, but they've been using Nick Mullins as the reason why Jimmy Garoppolo would be available to teams in this upcoming offseason. Yeah, and I hold that Jimmy Garoppolo is a starting quarterback. Nick Mullins is not.
Right.
I think Garoppolo is clinging to the starting quarterback moniker less and less as the years go by.
The biggest thing for Garoppolo is he's got to stay healthy. If you look at Garoppolo's record when healthy, he wins games. He reminds me of a certain short dude who played in the Northeast and was forced to play in Canada for most of his career, Doug Flutie.
Sure,
look at Doug Flutie's career. He doesn't have the greatest numbers, but that dude just won.
He just won.
Yeah. But the other side of it is that Garoppolo's reputation seems to get better when he's injured.
True that.
Ouch.
Hey, Raheem Mostert and Deebo Samuel, two of the stir sticks, they're both shut down for the season. They're such key contributors. I don't care if Peyton Manning in his prime is playing. They're really losing weapons, and it's going to be hard to stay up.
Yeah, I have to say, when Washington played San Francisco a couple of weeks back, it was Samuel went out very early, and then it was really just Ayuk who was there. It was the only real threat to Washington. Because Kittle's gone, and like you say, the other guys have gone. It's been a tough old year injury wise for the 49ers across the board. So especially offensively, and of course they lost Bosa defensively, and still, even though they lost Bosa defensively, they still have a top 5 defense. So it's been a tough old season.
Yeah, until Richard Sherman came back.
They're one of the teams who might be, one of the real bounce back teams next year when they draft a rookie quarterback.
DeAndre Hopkins will lead the NFL.
Well, that's true.
DeAndre Hopkins will probably lead the NFL in yardage, surpassing Kelsey and who else is number 2? I forget. Or what's his name out of Buffalo? I think he's going to have a monster game. Yeah, Diggs. He's having another offensive.
Although I don't know. Do you buy Arizona, guys? I still don't buy Arizona as a threat.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Well, wait. Let's put it into context. Do I buy Arizona as the last wild card team in the NFC? Yes.
Yes.
Do I buy them as anything more than one and done, or do I even see them as a one in the playoffs? No, I don't buy Arizona going very far in the playoffs. Well, James disagrees.
Yeah, because the number 2 spot, no matter who finishes there, is shaky. And Green Bay hasn't outright clinched anything yet, and they can
this week.
They will.
They can this week, but the Saints lead the South. The Seahawks currently lead the West, and at right now, I would take Arizona going into Seattle or New Orleans and winning a football game. I would definitely take them to win.
No, that's crazy, James.
That's crazy.
Because I would not take the Cardinals to beat either of those teams. Maybe the Saints because they're reeling, but let's see what
they're not going to be by the playoffs.
Yeah, but
that's my point.
I think I would support James with one of them. Seattle. We played Seattle this past week, and they're no great shakes. I tell you, they're a poor team. I could see Arizona, obviously, with them being a division rival as well. That's a completely different setup. So I could see them beating Seattle, James, for sure. But I don't buy them any further than that. I really don't.
Their offense right now is not even in the top half of the league.
Considering the Saints' defense couldn't handle Jalen Hurts 2 weeks ago, and Kyler Murray. Anomaly?
Listen, you had 2. How many running quarterbacks do you think we faced? It's not the first one. I'm saying New Orleans. You had 3 years not allowing a 100-yard rusher, and then boom, 2 in the same week. That's an anomaly. Dennis Allen shuts down the run. And so, yes, did they learn a lesson? Probably, but other than Magic Man Mahomes, They had guys in the backfield. They pancaked his ass. He's a Superman. I have no problem that they'd be able to game plan against another running quarterback. They've shut him down before. But that being said, it's percentage chance that Kyler Murray could go into New Orleans and upset him. Less than 20. Could it happen? Yes, but not against the defense. Yep.
Well, and let's also look at this.
Key.
Let's look at this objectively too. 2 of the last 3, I think, for Arizona have been won at the last second. You know, it's taken a miracle catch by DeAndre Hopkins to make that happen. Just saying. What's the injury report here, James?
For the Niners, Javon Kinlaw, the great rookie defensive tackle, has a knee injury. He's considered day-to-day. Richard Sherman has a calf injury. And wide receiver Richie James is nursing an ankle injury for Arizona. Jalen Thompson, their safety, has an ankle injury. Max Williams, his tight end, has an ankle injury. Larry Fitzgerald's nursing some inner thigh issues. Chase Edmond, ankle and knee. And Dennis Gardick, the linebacker, also nursing a knee injury. They're all showing up as questionable, along with Hassan Reddick, Drake Kirkpatrick, and Daryl Daniels.
So James, when you say nursing a groin, it just cracks me up.
You're welcome.
I get all warm and fuzzy inside.
Oh gosh,
those first 2 games we're going to watch because we're football fans. We love it. We're going to watch every game no matter what. But really, there's a lot of nothing to see there in those first 2 games.
Exactly, yeah.
This next game,
are you sure about that?
This next game, I think, is a surprising sleeper that has a lot of impact because depending on who wins, this determines a lot with the AFC playoff picture. It is the Miami Dolphins at the Las Vegas Raiders. This game will be televised on the NFL Network with an 8:15 kickoff. The Dolphins are 12th in the power rankings. The Raiders are 16th. Dolphins are favored by 3. And I will add, though, the Dolphins plus 10 takeaway giveaway, the Raiders minus 6. Dolphins allow 18.4 points per game, which leads the league. The Raiders allow 30.1. I like the Dolphins in this one. And this is more of the Dolphins are hot, the Raiders are not. Something's happened with the Raiders since that, near miss win against the Kansas City Chiefs. Everyone was rah, look at the Raiders. They are here to compete. They're ready to go. And since that point, they have been terrible.
Look at the defense.
I think one of the important factors here, and James will be able to help us out with this, is the injury report on the quarterback for the Raiders. I did read somewhere today that Mariota and Carr were sharing first team reps. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know actually even know what that means, to be honest, in terms of the game. But obviously, Jay, I went with the Raiders here because I really quite like to. I really quite liked seeing a fully fit Mariota on the field last week. That was nice to see him back to his. He looked like his Oregon days.
Yeah, and to piggyback on Neil, once Carr went out and Mariota came in, he actually looked like the NFL quarterback everyone thought he could be. He was literally just dropping dimes all over the place, and the Chargers defense had virtually no answer for him throwing the ball for much of the game when he came in there. They did pull it out at the end. But look, the Raiders' issues, quarterback aside, and yes, Carr is on the injury report as questionable. Reports are they are splitting reps this week in practice. How that plays out come Saturday, don't know because Carr hasn't been ruled officially out yet. And Mariota hasn't necessarily been dubbed the starter, even though there are rumblings that Mariota should probably take over the last 2 weeks just as an evaluation process, considering the 49ers, the Raiders' dire situation as far as winning this game and what it means for their slim playoff chances, which is none as far as I'm concerned, having lost to the Chargers. But you fire your defensive coordinator on a short week. How did you expect things to get better in 4 days against the Chargers offense and a guy who pretty much everyone's dubbed Rookie of the Year? And it played out that way. They couldn't get to Herbert. No pressure. The secondary was a shambles. Receivers were running free all over the field. And no one thinks Tua's pretty much playing on the same level as Herbert right now, but he still presents a problem, if not with his arms and definitely his legs. and the linebackers are virtually MIA in this defense. So nothing's fixed right now with this Raiders team. Quarterback is just another straw in the camel's back that probably hasn't broken just yet, because it's what can go wrong next. And that's all this season has been for the Raiders, considering their current 7-7 record.
Man, I don't really have much to add to anything here other than what I've already said. Doc, what do you think?
I think we're not going to be able to make a real call on this until we see. There's so many guys limited in practice with the Raiders, right? But again, take a look at the other side of the ball. Key guys, offensive players, same thing. Walkthroughs, limited. We're going to see what the questionables are like by Friday. I think that with Mariota in there, they can give him a game, because I think he still believes he's a starting quarterback. Is he a top 32 quarterback in the league? Probably. But he's still like kissing your sister right now until he shows something. I think he wants to show something. So,
finishing up with the Raiders injuries, Malik Collins and Tanner Muse, defense tackle and linebacker. Collins has been designated to return from the injury list. Tanner Muse, the linebacker, was placed on the injury reserve list from the reserve COVID list. Jonathan Abram is still in concussion protocol. He's listed as questionable. Center Rodney Hudson, guard Gabe Jackson, offensive tackle Sam Young, also all listed as questionable. Hunter Renfro is questionable in concussion protocol. Henry Ruggs is out. And defense tackle Maurice Hurts is also listed as questionable for the Dolphins. Gesicki is questionable with his shoulder injury. Wide receivers Jakeem Grant, Devontae Parker are also listed as questionable. Both have hamstring injuries. Safety Bobby McCain is questionable as well, along with Calvin Noy, Shaq Lawson, Clayton Fredericks, Jerome Baker, and Eric Flowers.
If the Dolphins win, I don't think the Raiders are technically out of it, but it pretty much ends their playoff run at that point.
They're 7-7, and you need 11 to make the playoffs, because 11.
Will you stop throwing out numbers like that? You don't need 11 to get into the playoffs.
You're going to need 11. You're going to need 11, because there's a team one game ahead of them, or a couple of games ahead of them, that's going to win 11 games. I'm sorry.
We'll see. That will do it for Saturday. We're moving to Sunday, 1:00. Hello, everybody who's skipped ahead to this point in the podcast. How you doing? You might want to go back and check out our great conversation on potential GMs and coaches in the NFL. That's marked for you, so you can go back into the chapters. But I'm assuming you're here because you wanted to skip the Christmas and the Saturday breakdown. So you missed our wonderful breakdowns of those 4 games. And by doing so, you left yourself short in trying to make your decisions for over-unders on ThriveFantasy.com. That's right. Our partners over at Thrive Fantasy, you can get the app either at the App Store or the Play Store. You're going to want to go and listen to those things so you can make your best educated guess as to what the over-unders are going to be, because the better you do in the over-unders, the better chance you have to winning. There are new guarantees every week, so your regular fantasy teams probably out of it at this point. You might be out of the fantasy championships like my buddy. So you're going to want to try Thrive Fantasy. It's pretty easy to play. Just go get the app. And of course, if you use our promo code NEXTFANUP at the Thrive Fantasy app, you're going to get up to a 50% bonus with your first $20 deposit, up to $50. NEXTFANUP. Use our promo code. I'm just glad that I'm worth 50% of your wagering. But we're here now on Sunday, 1:00. We will kick off with the Falcons at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Falcons 27th in the power rankings. The Chiefs are number 1. Las Vegas has Kansas City favored by 10.5. The Chiefs can secure the number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs and the lone first round bye with a win against the Falcons. Kansas City is seeking to match the best regular season by a defending Super Bowl champion in NFL history. The 2011 Packers finished 15-1. The 2004 Patriots only managed a 14-2 record. And to be fair, 5 other teams also managed 14-2, but it gave me an opportunity to mention the great Patriots of old. Oh, God, they were so good. It's a shame. Anyway, the Chiefs are going to win this one by 10.5, though. I think that number might be a little high.
Well, 10.5 is an interesting number for a start. 10.5 is usually the number that James uses to lock up games. And I see he hasn't locked this one up. So well done, James. That's a step forward. Come on, this game, it's over. The question I would ask you guys, because I'm not really interested in the game itself, because the Chiefs will win quite easily, I think, is what's Matt Ryan's trade value?
Depends on the new coaching staff.
I think we got 10. We probably could do an entire podcast on this. We got 10 quarterbacks. Will they play? Will they be a starting quarterback on a different team in 2021? I think that's a full podcast because I don't know his cap value right now is dead cap value, so it's hard to answer that.
Well, thanks, guys. That was really helpful. Listener, you can see what I've put up with these three guys.
Well, I mean, listen, I think you asked me this question last week or 2 weeks ago, but I said of all the available quarterbacks or those that are rumored to be available, Matt Ryan would be the one I want on my team.
So would you give the Patriots first round draft choice, which is going to be around about 15, 16? Would you give that up for Matt Ryan, or would you be looking to
I would. I would,
really?
Because I don't know which rookie quarterback is available.
The middle of the first round is the dead zone of the draft anyway. Why not?
Yeah,
100%. Because I got Matt Ryan for at least. I mean, I think Matt Ryan's only like 33. I mean, he's got at least 10 more years in him.
Is he older than that?
I don't think so. I'll look it up right now while you guys are talking about something else. Matt Ryan is born in 1985, so he's 35. All right. Well, he's still got a good 8 years in him.
3 to 5.
5 years max, maybe. Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way: he's definitely got 5. So, I mean, I'll take Matt Ryan for 5 years. And especially if I'm picking in the middle of the first round, I would. I think that.
What does MJ say about this game?
Did MJ say something about this game? Because I didn't tell anybody to write anything this week. So
I'm pretty sure MJ wrote something about this game.
MJ, in fact, did write something about this game. All right.
Just to break into a little behind the scenes thing, James, how many times did you text him to remind him to write his preview? Come on, how many times?
I didn't have to, actually.
Wow. He starts off with, "This is going to be one hell of a game." Well, this should be interesting. But just the spoiler alert, his final score is 42-20. So I'm wondering how it's going to be a hell of a game. The Dirty Birds defense has played about 2 or 3 complete games this season. That is not going to be enough to stop the Chiefs. The Dirty Birds are coming off a loss to division rival Tampa Bay, a game they should have won. But like we have done all season, we found a way to lose. What can I say about the offense that hasn't been said all season long? Well, then I'm not going to have you say it. But let's see here. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Hayden Hurst, Russell Gage, and everyone else in the receiver corps is going to have to run their routes and have the best situational awareness they've had all year. Speaking of Julio, currently we're not sure if he'll play or not, as he's still nursing a hamstring, and Coach Morris is not committed to Jones playing since this is nothing to play for. Ito Smith, Brian Hill, and Matt Stafford has something to play for because it's Sunday. Gosh darn it.
And he's a quarterback of the Detroit Lions.
That's right.
Darn it.
Ito Smith, Brian Hill, and Todd Gurley are going to have to pick their spots, hit the holes hard when their name is called. And to bring up the run game, Ito Smith has been moved into the number 1 running back spot for the Dirty Birds. Gurley has not done what he needed to do to hold the spot. Not all his fault. Offense is not calling as many run plays, so it stops him from getting into a rhythm. Not to mention, he is not the same Todd Gurley he was since his 80-year-old knees are 80 years old. On the defense side of the ball, I don't know what can be done to stop Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, that's pretty much
can't.
Everybody says that. Last week, the Saints rushed him a lot. He punished them with his legs. His ability to extend plays with his legs, second to none. Listen, Pat Mahomes is a lot of things. He's a wizard at the quarterback position. But I think there are other quarterbacks that do a better job with their legs than Patrick Mahomes.
Russell Wilson.
There you go. There's one. Kyler Murray. We just talked about him. I'd put him in there.
Depends.
Situationally, he's great. He's a great runner of the football.
Depends what job you're talking about. With like,
this is not to take anything away from Patrick Mahomes, but to say that his ability to extend plays with his legs, second to none, that's a little too far.
Is that one of your super fans?
Are you just jealous of Patrick Mahomes, or is it just your usual Patrick Mahomes hate?
Listen, I've come to embrace Patrick Mahomes as
Superman.
a great quarterback. I mean,
they haven't lost in 410 days.
Of how he still makes plays that he has no business making.
Did you see that one last week, Todd?
The touchdown throw to the back of the end zone.
He had two guys heading into his face, and he thought he was throwing it away, and he drops it in a bucket from 20 yards. Just unbelievable. Superman.
He had no business making that throw.
Yep.
He had no business completing the throw, and it had no business as being as accurate as it was. Yep. And all of those things didn't matter because it still happened.
And yet all of that.
Mahomes, that's his. When you look up the definition of Patrick Mahomes, that's it. He has no business making the throws and the completions and the touchdowns that he does, but he does it anyway.
Yep.
Raison d'etre is the term you're looking for. But it's all that, and yet what do you focus on? He's not good with his legs. I mean, come on, Jim.
Listen, gave me an opportunity to just take a slap at him. All right.
The Chiefs have not lost in 410 days. The Chiefs have not lost. Yeah, it's like, forget it. There's only 3 teams probably in this league that can beat the Chiefs right now. Otherwise, give them Lombardi.
Yeah,
even without Allaire.
That's not how football works, though, is it really?
And we've spent too much time on a game that we really didn't spend much time on. Yeah. James, what's the injury report?
As optimistic as MJ is, to add to his injury report, cornerbacks Dequez Denard, Isaiah Oliver, and safety Ricardo Allen are all questionable for the Falcons, so that's not going to help. For the Chiefs, linebacker Anthony Hitchens is out. He was placed on the reserve COVID list yesterday. Damian Wilson, a linebacker, Darwin Thompson, a running back, Mike Remmers, the offensive tackle, all listed as questionable. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not going to play for the rest of the season with his hip and ankle injury, so he should be available for the playoffs. He's not being placed on injury reserve. He's just pretty much out for the rest of the season.
Le'Veon Bell.
That's why you signed Le'Veon Bell, exactly.
They get their players just drop in their lap. Look who they picked up. Le'Veon's a perfect example. Just drops into a perfect situation.
Question: Do we see Chad Henne in the fourth quarter?
No. No. Look, here's the thing with the Chiefs. They have not really blown anybody away this season, as far as like 20-plus points that I can recall. They've had a couple of 2-score wins or whatever, but they haven't really. I would
say recently. I think at the beginning of the season they were the Chiefs that we all know and love. Recently, the scores haven't been that close.
They beat the Texans by 14, the Chargers by 3, the Ravens by 14, the Patriots by 16. That's the first 4 games of the season.
Yeah.
I think the biggest margin of victory they had was against the Broncos, the one that was at Denver in the snow, 43-16. That's the biggest margin of victory they've had all season. Oh, and the Jets the following week, 35-9. But outside of those 2 games, they really haven't blown anybody away.
And then you get a feeling they've been playing within themselves for all these weeks, just doing enough to get through.
Yeah, and that's the thing. As stellar as their offense is, the defense is doing just enough to get them the W, which is fine. I just hope it doesn't become a problem in the playoffs. Look, last year they came from behind to win all 3 of their playoff games, including the Super Bowl. I don't think that's going to work this year. Yeah. I think this is the team that's going to have to, get up 10-14 early and hang on. And, you like to see them dominate the Falcons the way they did the Broncos and the Jets. I don't think it's going to happen. Again, the last couple of games, the Saints 32-29, the Dolphins 33-27. The Broncos 22-16. That was in Kansas City, and the Buccaneers 27-24. All 4 of those games they could have easily lost because they were down at one point late in the game.
They were down to the Saints in the third quarter, I thought, and after they pancaked Mahomes. Did you see that pancake, Pod?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God! I thought, what quarterback walks away from that? I thought that's a 10 rib breaker. They were in the backfield more often than not. Did you see their pressure percentage on him? And they still couldn't get him. And as soon as Jordan went out of the game, what did they do? They attacked the right side of the line, left him one-on-one with the defensive end, and he made him look. He dropped him like a prom dress. Sorry. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
The Chiefs have been fascinating. The Chiefs have been fascinating this year. They're on a roll, and it'll be interesting to see them in the playoffs.
There's going to be a 45-42 playoff.
Yeah, come on. This is the most one-sided game of the week. Can we move on?
Yep.
It's soon Christmas here. I don't know what time it is with you guys.
Listen, I know it was Doc's fault. Doc's the one that went.
All
right. Did we finish the injury report here, James?
Yeah.
Don't care. Move.
Bears at Jacksonville. Bears 15th in the power rankings. Jacksonville somehow took the 32nd spot. Listen, I know the Jets won a game. They're still the worst team in the NFL by a lot, Neil. The reason why the Jets aren't in last place in our power rankings is because of where you actually have the Jets ranked at 30th.
Yep.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I have them at 31.
Yeah, I think
one spot ahead of Jacksonville.
They're 32.
Just
because they won a game, they're still the worst team. They're not.
No. It's not Jay. It's not the fact that they won a game. It's who they beat. And I'm highly disappointed.
And it's also the fact that they have, over the last few weeks, got themselves into double-digit leads, I think, twice, and obviously gone on to lose the games. But they've shown more to me than some teams.
Apparently more than the Jaguars. But I do not believe the Jaguars. The Jaguars are not the worst team in the league. The Jets are. Jaguars are pretty darn close, though. And that said, Vegas has got Mitch Trubisky favored by 7.5 points. What do we think about that point spread? Yeah, I believe in Mitch Trubisky. I believe in the Bears. The Bears are on a roll, and they're certainly going to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. But are they going to beat the Jaguars by a touchdown plus?
Yeah, it's because of David Montgomery.
Right.
The Bears are a different team when he's out, regardless of what turnaround Trubisky's got. David Montgomery.
Yeah, it's also Doc. It's also because the Jaguars have got the 32nd ranked defense in the league, and I think that will, like you say, Montgomery will probably get his yards, and the reborn Mitchell Trubisky will probably have a reasonable game when he's playing the 32nd ranked defense in the league.
So does Mitch Trubisky keep his job in Chicago, or is he an available quarterback in the offseason?
Available.
Yeah, one of them's definitely going to be gone. You can't keep them both. There's definitely going to be a quarterback situation unless they luck up on one of these teams that get a new head coach and decide to jettison their 8-year plus veteran.
Yeah. The one thing
Stafford and Ryan.
The one thing you'd have to say, Jay, is that Trubisky has done probably all he can do in the last few weeks since he got his job back. He can't do much more than what he's done if he's wanting to keep his job next year. He's played really well. As much as we all have fun with Trubisky and obviously that whole draft and where he landed, you've got to take your hat off to him and say, through that adversity, he has come back and played really well the last 2 or 3 weeks. So, bit of kudos for you, I think.
Here's the problem, Neil, with Trubisky coming back. What he's like, he is like a girl who had bad acne.
Oh, no, Doc. Don't go
there. Bad acne. She's lost weight. She looks great in jeans now. She got her hair done. She wears makeup. The boots you got to wear. Everything looks fabulous. But in your mind, as you're dating her, you're going, man, you were ugly as stink before.
Can you hear that? Doc, can you hear that funny noise? That's Jay noting down the time that you were saying that.
That was clean. That was clean.
I think that one can stay, but I will say I thought more that was the sound of women that listen to this podcast turning it off immediately.
Basically, yeah.
Listener, if you're wondering what that was,
had an acne problem.
That was Doc doing one of his classics.
All right. Well, but I mean the analogy does stick. I mean, it's for
back to the football. Trubisky. What the Bears did last week versus Minnesota, running David Montgomery, is pretty much what I said earlier this season about the Cleveland Browns. Run the ball to make Baker look better. Running the ball made Trubisky look better than he was. And as long as they commit to running the ball and stop trying to put everything on Trubisky's shoulders, he will look like a competent NFL quarterback. He's never going to be the guy. He just won't. He needs a heaping load of talent around him. And it starts with running the football.
I know the feeling.
Stick to that formula, they'll be fine.
But
Nice
I tell
try
you,
there, Neil.
when we start getting Cleveland Brown anecdotes in a non-Browns game, it's time to move on.
Injuries.
Yeah, there's nothing really here. Cordero Patterson is considered day-to-day with a knee injury. Deion Bush, Buster Screen, Jalen Johnson, 3/4 of the secondary. They're listed as questionable for the Bears. For the Jaguars, James Robinson has an ankle injury. That's about it. Nothing else here to mention.
Gardner
James
Minshew.
Robinson, Rookie of the Year.
Gardner Minshew, is he a capable NFL starter? And if so, is there a team out there that will trade for Gardner Minshew?
No.
Since this team is clearly getting Trevor Lawrence.
No, and maybe.
Because Minshew's cheap.
He's
he's real
That's
cheap.
why a team will probably snatch him up to be their backup. But that's about it. No one's going to pick him up to start. I don't.
Well,
Wait.
If a team's only going to try and pick him up to be their backup, then what's the point of Minshew leaving Jacksonville in the first place?
Hey, the new staff may not want him there as the backup for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Minshew is an interesting quarterback. Not necessarily for my team. I'm just saying I think Minshew's got a story that's not finished being told.
So what?
Let him go to Frisco and be the backup there because they have a problem at backup quarterback.
So when I start speaking about Matt Ryan, we get nothing but tumbleweed whistling through the podcast, and you guys can speak for 5 minutes on Gardner Minshew. Jesus.
What are you talking about? I said I would take Matt Ryan. My God. All right.
He doesn't listen when you speak, Pod. What's the next game?
Apparently not. The Bengals are at the Houston Texans. The Bengals are 30th in the power rankings. The Texans are 25th. I honestly think that might be too high for the Texans, but they are favored by 8. What is the quarterback situation in Cincinnati right now? Is Ryan Finley fit to play?
Yeah. Is something wrong with him?
He only passed for 89 yards.
You're talking about quarterbacks who've got great legs. I mean, Finley, there's your man. Did you see that touchdown he scored against the Steelers? Dodging and weaving, ducking and diving. Fantastic.
Oh, you mean the straight line from 30 yards out on the read option that they didn't know was coming for the 15th time?
Or he looked like a puppy running away from Michael Vick, more likely.
And it'll be great. The Texans right now, by the way, have one of the 10 worst running defense.
Mm-hmm.
Rush offense versus NFL average, right? Houston's way down there, but think about how they ran the ball. That has to be a close game.
Yeah, it'll be close.
Yeah, it'll be close because I think they were inspired. Did you see anybody lay the lumber like the Bengals did the first half?
That's right. You're right, though. The Houston Texans have got the second last run defense in the league, giving up 150.5 yards per game, Doug.
Oh, Giovanni Bernard, then. A big game coming up again.
Because there's no Mixon. Is there Mixon still out?
I believe so,
yeah. Yeah, he's been on IR since the 19th. Tyler Boyd is questionable because he's in concussion protocol. Yeah. Logan Wilson, the linebacker, shows up. It's questionable for Houston. We got Duke Johnson and C.J. Prosise, both listed as questionable. Cornerbacks Phillip Gaines and John Reed also show up as questionable. And Titus Howard, the offensive tackle, is in concussion protocol.
I can wait to talk about Von Bell's hit on Juju Smith-Schuster.
Oh, man, that's sweet.
Apparently was motivated by Juju's pregame, but I'll wait until we get to the Steelers because Mike Tomlin
we got a lot to say about that.
You're going to have a TikTok stat for us, aren't you? I can feel it.
By the way, we're all taking the Texans except for Doc.
Mm-hmm.
Doc is going with the Bengals, but Doc is going the opposite of everybody this week.
No, I would do it anyways. That's one game. I just think that they had a spark, and his name. He is a white defensive end. I forget his name. Was in the backfield most of the game. Incredibly impressive defense. The way that they were laid out, everything. Cover 2, cover 3, all 6. They were impressive. I think it'll continue.
Yeah, I think that had more so to do with the opponent they were playing last week. The divisional game, they're pretty much Pittsburgh's whipping board for like the last decade plus. So they tend to get up for those games. I don't think they bring the same intensity this week against the Texans.
Do you think that cemented the Bengals head coach in terms of his job for next year? That win against the big division rival?
He was fine anyway.
I mean, considering he didn't have Joe Burrow, and I think it could have been worse if Burrow was playing. That second half, balance. They pretty much went to sleep offensively in the second half and let Pittsburgh climb back in that game Monday night. If Burrow was the quarterback, that would have what happened in the first half would have extended far into the second half, and Pittsburgh would have been blown out.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Whether or not a factor in Houston because they play in a dome anyway, but also not a factor at Kansas City or Jacksonville, the two previous games that we discussed. Nor will it be a factor with the Cleveland Browns at the New York Jets. The Browns 6th, the Jets, can we say 31 and a half? They're 30. They're 32. They should be 32. It's where they belong. They're 32. They're actually 31 in our power rankings. The Browns are favored by 9.5 points in this particular game. Now, I like the Browns, but James brought this up on Tuesday. Just when you want to believe in the Browns, they go out and they do something stupid. And this is a particular instance where the Jets might be feeling themselves and the Browns might go out and do something stupid. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Baker and the boys are going to be just fine. They're going to go out and they're going to take care of business like they're supposed to. But I would not be surprised if Adam Gase forgets the fact that his one job is not to go out and win every week. It's actually to finish the season losing. Anyone disagree?
You haven't picked this game, and I have to go back to the power rankings thing because
I meant the Browns.
The way I look at power rankings is that if a team wins a game against a much better team, they should at least get a little nudge up the power rankings just for that performance alone. So to have them at 32 when teams like the Jags and all the rest of it lost games, come on, Jay. It's just because of the
Cleveland 368 points for, 374 against. They next to the 2012 Indianapolis Colts at 11-5. This is a cool stat, not for anybody else but me. Biggest gap for Pythagorean win percentage versus actual win percentage. Based on the way they are playing, quality of play, all three measures of football. They right now would be scheduled for 6.9 wins the way they are playing. Second only to the 2012 Indianapolis Colts, and this is of the last 20 years.
I mean,
they're not a mirage, but they're getting close.
But they did get slaughtered, didn't they, by the Ravens?
To account the first matchup between when they played the Ravens in Week 1 and the Steelers in Week 6. They gave up 38 points in each of those games and only scored 6 and 7 respectively. So that's why their point differential is so lopsided.
Yep.
Is those two games alone. I mean, they got blasted from the word go and never really got neither one.
We were in that oh no, not again phase.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, they started out 4-2, but when those are the two that you lose, your point difference and the 4 games they won, they didn't win by more than 14 points in any of those games.
Yeah. So Doc, are these
make up for losing by 31 plus in each of those other two?
Are the Browns the Arizona Cardinals of the AFC when it comes to the playoffs?
No.
I wasn't asking you.
No.
I'm asking Doc. He gets paid more than you for this podcast. So
I think
back your injury reports.
Oh man.
Does that question remain?
Yeah,
yes.
The
question remains.
No, I don't think that. I think Cleveland's more of a mirage than Arizona is.
Oh,
Arizona's
really?
Arizona's bipolar. Arizona's bipolar. Cleveland's more consistent.
Wow.
I'm going to ask you. I'm going to pose this question because I disagree with Doc. I don't think the Browns. I think the Browns and the Cardinals are fairly. I think that's an apt comparison. But my question would be: are the Browns better without Odell Beckham Jr.?
Yes. Because early in the season they were trying to force the ball to Beckham Jr.
I think
that never works in the NFL. Honestly, it just doesn't work. It's got to be team. It's got to be team first.
I have to see it next year. And again, I hear what you're saying, Neil, and I agree. They were forcing the ball to Odell earlier in the season. And this is one of the things that happens with offensive-minded coaches when they get all these nice, shiny weapons on the outside. They want to make everybody happy.
You got it.
The strength of this team is its offensive line and those running backs.
James, I'd probably have to quantify it by saying they were forcing the ball to Odell Beckham, and everybody knew it.
Right. Yeah. No. I hear what you're saying. And yeah, we could see it. It didn't matter what the play call was, but you could clearly see Baker Mayfield tunnel vision on Beckham Jr. in almost every pass play. Yes, that is very much true. And yes, since he's been gone, they've had to reshape this offense, and they got back to basics, again, running the football. My concern, and again, I hear you're leaning towards the same concern when Odell is healthy and he's back, do they continue to run the ball at the same rate that they do right now? I hope that they do. And if Odell has a problem with him, ship him out. Yeah. Because if the formula for winning for this team is keeping Baker upright by running the ball and then using play action boot off of that to get these wide receivers in one-on-one situations because they're 8 in the box to try to take away Hunt and Chubb, then let that be the way you win the game. And as a wide receiver, shut your mouth and wait on your 6 to 7 targets per game. You're not going to get 10 to 12. That's just not going to happen in this offense.
James, we're a year or two away from saying there's a Hall of Fame player there in Odell Beckham, and he's not going to fulfill that talent, and that's going to be whether you like him or not as a person and all the rest of it, that doesn't matter. That's a wasted talent. It's heading that direction.
I mean, he is a Hall of Fame talent, but you can't force him the ball on every single pass play, and he can't be demonstrative the way he's been the last couple of years, demanding the football no matter what. At some point, he's got to understand how this offense runs is through Chubb and Hunt, and that he and Landry are the secondary options of this offense, not the primary. And Baker Mayfield needs to step up and take a leadership role in his team and support that. And I know he's a quarterback, and I know quarterbacks always want the ball in their hands.
Wait. You put the onus on the wrong person. The onus is on Kevin Stefanski, not on Baker Mayfield.
No. Look, but as players on the field, Baker Mayfield needs to take control of that situation on field. And sometimes, whether it's in the huddle, in the meeting room, on the sidelines, or whatever, he's got to take more of a leadership role, and not so much this cocky little pissant who who believes his own hype from time to time.
Have we answered your question, Jay?
Sure. Neil, here's my question now. Moving back to the Jets. The Jets screwing up the number 1 pick. They no longer have it. That's Jacksonville's as of right now. Are any of the other quarterbacks better than Sam Darnold?
Well, I mean, everybody was talking at the start of the year about Justin Fields, but he's morphing into Dwayne Haskins at the moment, in terms of his on-field performance. He's getting You only want your quarterbacks to get better and better and better. But
why would you draft a quarterback from Ohio State? Drop the mic. Yeah. That's it. I mean, it's getting so predictive.
It's repetitive, isn't it? In the failures of them. So you've got him, Jay. Then you kind of drop down the tier to Zach Wilson and Trask and Lance and these guys. And I don't think they're ready to play in the NFL, although we've been proved wrong the last couple of years with quarterbacks.
I think Zach Wilson is, Neil. I do. I think there's 25% of him is Mahomes, and there's something exciting about him.
Yeah, and the other 75% is probably Colt McCoy. So yeah.
Well, what would you rather have, that or Justin Fields, who's going to end up in a strip joint in 2 years?
Yeah, I would rather have Trey Lance personally.
Trey Lance, remind me which team Trey Lance is from.
He's North Dakota State, isn't he? Carson Wentz is.
And he hasn't played, right?
He's played one game, more of a sort of exhibition, if you like, this season. Otherwise, he's sat out. Yeah.
So, to me, I don't think the Jets can take a quarterback at number 2.
And the problem with the Jets at number 2, Jay, just to widen the point, is the best player in this draft is Penei Sewell, the offensive left tackle from Oregon. And what did they do last year? They just drafted Mekhi Becton, who's played really well at left tackle. So they're kind of like, oh, damn. Not only is he not a quarterback, but we can't even take the best player because we just drafted him in that position last year. So it's a tough old draft for the Jets. Typical Jets, isn't it, really?
Yeah, really is. But that's okay because they're a lock for Week 17. We'll get to that. The Indianapolis. Do we need to do an injury report on this game? But who are some of the big injuries?
Chris Hubbard, the offensive tackle for the Browns, has been placed on injury reserve with a kneecap. Andrew Sendejo is questionable. Wyatt Teller is doubtful. That's the guard. And Sheldon Richardson is questionable with a neck injury. And Quinnen Williams is out for the Jets.
Yeah, that's a big one, huh? Yeah. He's played real well in the last few weeks.
This is, speaking of big ones, this is a big one. The Indianapolis Colts are at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Colts 9th in the power rankings, the Steelers 11th. These two teams essentially switched spots in 1 week. It's funny. The Steelers fell from 5 to 11. Colts moved up from 12 to 9. Vegas has got the Colts favored at 1.5 points. With a loss by Miami or Baltimore, the Colts will cement a spot in the playoffs. Let's see here. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh can clinch its first AFC North Division title since 2017 with a victory in this one. To me, this is another game of two teams going in opposite directions. The Colts are going up. The Steelers are coming down. I just don't know if this is where the floor is for the Steelers. To me, the problem is the Steelers are losing linebackers like kids eating candy on Halloween. They're going to have trouble stopping the run, and Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines have done really good things for Phillip Rivers this season.
Yeah, Jay, before you get to that point, I want to go back to the Monday night game in which they pissed the bed in the first half. The defense played well. The problem was the offense kept crapping the bed and giving them the short field to have to defend after they just made the opposition go 3 and out. So as much as the defense has been losing players, the backups who stepped up have been playing well when they're put in normal defensive situations. Not like the Bengals actually went up and down the field on them. They took advantage of short fields to put points on the board. The problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers, first and foremost, is the play calling, because I don't understand why they're not running the ball anymore. And secondly, the quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger these last 3 weeks looks like a guy who's done. And, you know, we talk about rookies when they come in and they hit the rookie wall around week 10. That's pretty much around when everything fell apart for Pittsburgh. And we all say that they could have easily lost the game against the Ravens when the Ravens finally had enough people healthy to play. But if that was Lamar Jackson and not Robert Griffin playing quarterback despite everyone else on the field, the Steelers would have lost that game. And that would have been lost 1 instead of the following week to Washington. And I don't put everything on the defense. Some of it, yeah, I'd say 10 to 20% falls on the defense. 50% is on the coaching staff as far as the play calling. And then another 30 to 40% falls on Ben Roethlisberger, because he looks horrible. I'm sorry, this guy looks bad. He looks like just not right. And he doesn't look like Ben of old. It looks like his age is taking a toll on him.
Yeah, you can't.
He doesn't look like a guy who can get it done anymore.
You certainly can't disagree with the Roethlisberger issue. That's looked. I mean, he's looked as bad as any quarterback in the league in the last few weeks. We played them a few weeks ago, and he was terrible in that game. But then he suffered from a lot of drops as well in that game. I wasn't sure how many drops there were in the Bengals game, but that has been a problem for them this year. But
the receiving core is young. And when the leader of your receiving core is Juju Smith-Schuster, and he's too busy doing TikTok dances on the opposing team's logo, let's talk about this for a quick moment. I honestly don't have that big of a problem with social media and the players embracing social media and doing things on social media. What I do have a problem with is when their social media crosses over into what we like to call in baseball the unwritten rules. There is an unwritten rule in football that you do not disrespect the opposing team. You do not go into their house and do anything on their logo. And honestly, this is a bigger deal in college than it is in the NFL, but it's still a big deal. Just ask Emmitt Smith in Dallas and what he did to somebody who disrespected the star. To me, Von Bell went out and did to Juju Smith-Schuster in a game what Emmitt Smith did in a non-play situation. And Juju Smith deserved it. Now, to take that a step further, Mike Tomlin was asked, is this something that is a distraction to the team? And Mike Tomlin said he will address it, but honestly, he doesn't feel that this is a legitimate gripe of professional football players, that this is not something that motivates them. No, Mike Tomlin, this is clearly something that is motivating them. You don't give another team bulletin board material, whether it's actual bulletin board material or doing a dance on their logo pregame. You just don't do it. And you're doing it, and you're not doing anything to stop it. I would expect more out of a guy who's had to deal with this with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown in previous seasons. Like, get a hold of it, man. Your team is on the downward spiral. You need to pick them up, not letting them continue to do the things that have gotten them to this point.
What happened with such a demonstrative coach, a well-known coach, a respected coach? What happens when a team is not like they're supposed to be, taking on the personality of the head coach? Completely contrary. You're right. Well said, Pod. Well said.
I mean, we're supposed to be unleashing hell in December. We haven't, like I said, we haven't seen hell being unleashed by the Pittsburgh Steelers in December in quite some time. Basically, ever since you said it. So, yeah. Well, Neil, you're going with the Steelers, though, in this game.
Well, at the time that he said it, the stars in his team were still defensive players, despite whatever accolades Roethlisberger had at the time. That was where the majority of the leadership was on the squad. Defensive players, you had Palomalu back there. Oh, gosh, why am I blanking on his name right now? Who had the neck injury several years ago?
Shazier?
No.
Shazier.
Shazier was one of the leaders on that defense as well. All those guys are gone now, and unfortunately, this team has shifted offensively. And while that's fine, it's not the blue-collar work ethic of this team from bygone eras. Even when they had good to great quarterback play, even in the days of Terry Bradshaw, this is still a physical football team on both sides of the ball. They're not physical on offense. And that's a problem. Think about when Hines Ward was there. That entire it didn't matter who else was there. Huh?
Always keep my head on a swivel.
Always. And Hines Ward made that receiver room tough. So it didn't matter who else was in that receiving room with Hines Ward. They all took on his personality. Now these guys, I'm not going to say they're soft, but they're a little bit too finesse for me to be Steeler wide receivers. The toughest receiver they have really is Eric Ebron, and he's a tight end.
And he's out.
What? Their offensive line has really come downhill the last 5 games.
Well, they're old call passes to runs in the ratio of 5 to 1.
And they're old too, right? I mean, how old is that Steeler offensive line?
They're all over 30, I believe.
Yeah. And these are the sort of things that happen to a team that was looking to be undefeated.
Again, another reason to run the football. Let these guys beat up the defensive line early and often. There's no reason to come out 4 and 5 wide on your first series every single time you start the game to, quote, loosen up the defense.
Well, as I mentioned,
old school smash mouth football.
As I mentioned, introducing this game, I think the Colts are going to rely heavily on that running game against a banged up Steelers defense to win this one. Neil, you picked the Steelers. Why?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the Steelers, they've probably had their shock in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and they'll probably come back together in typical Steelers fashion and grind out a victory. I was quite impressed with Benny Snell actually last week. You were talking about the running game struggling. He did have 84 yards, didn't he? At nearly, just over 4.5 yards per carry. So they might chuck him the ball a few more times. I would like a weather report from you though, Jay, because I'm not keen on Phillip Rivers playing outside in Pittsburgh.
It's just going to be chilly, 38 degrees and partly cloudy. The wind, not a factor.
Sorry.
Yep, wind, not a factor.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I think the Steelers will just come back because of the issues they've had. I think Tomlin will shake them up a little bit and get them back, and there'll be a bit more focus in that locker room this week. Maybe 11-0 kind of sent a little bit of they relaxed a little bit and took things for granted. Maybe this will just these last three losses in a row will shake them out of that, because before that 11-0 they weren't a great team, but they were good enough to win games. So I think they've still got it in them. The loss of Devin Bush, I think, was a big blow for them earlier.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that.
He's probably at least a Pro Bowl level.
He was their
player.
next leader too.
Yeah,
their next leader.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and as James is about to tell us, Eric Ebron, their best quote unquote wide receiver, got hurt at the very beginning of the game on Monday night, and I suspect he's not going to be available this week.
Well, he's listed as questionable as of today. Latest report I have here is that there's no structural or organ damage from the hard hit he took to his back inside area. So he is questionable. I say keep an eye on it. Vance Williams, the linebacker, has been activated from the COVID-19 list, but he is still listed as out.
Was that
He's
back inside area or backside area?
No, back and side.
Okay.
At backside. James Conner is questionable with his quad injury, though, again, as Neil alluded to, the way they were running the ball in the second half, I'd give him more carries. And Kevin Dotson, the guard, is also listed as questionable. For the Colts, wide receiver Marcus Johnson is questionable due to a quad injury, and that's all we have here for the Colts. They are pretty much healthy for the most part.
All right, the final 1 o'clock game is the New York Giants at the Baltimore Ravens. Giants 21st, Ravens 10th, and that is the number that Vegas is favoring the Ravens by 10. I mean, I don't know how much we need to say about this. The Ravens, speaking of a wake-up call, seem to have been woken up. Of course, it's pretty easy to do when it's Jacksonville as your opponent. The Giants, are they going to be with Daniel Jones or without? Honestly, I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter, but he is listed as questionable.
So
he'd have to play, and he'd have to play out of his mind to have a chance in this game.
I mean, there's really not much more to add to this one. I mean, I think the real question is Joe Judge is coming to the end of his first year. I suspect he will be the coach of the Giants again next season. But did we really see any improvement between what the Giants have done previous to where they are now?
Defensively, I think,
Defensively, yes. In the second half of the season, they were playing better. Offensively, slight, but I think we would have seen better improvement from Jones if Saquon didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
So this team will look vastly different next season. They have to do some things on the offensive line to protect Jones. I
think they did.
Health is always a key contributor, but defensively, look, as long as no one plucks their defensive coordinator for any reason, they should be fine going into next season and one of the scarier defenses to game plan for.
It's true. We haven't mentioned Jason Garrett as a potential head coaching candidate.
True.
And we shouldn't.
I think that the difference with the Giants this year, I think, has been that they stay competitive in most games. You know, really,
yeah.
And that's a good sign for the coach.
And listen, the Ravens have been putting up over 40 a game the last 3. They're on a roll. Mark them in the playoffs. I think this is a route, even though I picked the Giants. So. Daniel Jones will play. He'll rush for 100, throw for 200.
Yeah, I don't think Daniel Jones is rushing for anything.
The
only other Giants injury is Darnay Holmes, the cornerback. He's questionable. Ravens have Marcus Peters, Calais Campbell, and Christian Welch, all defensive players showing up in the injury report, but they're all showing up as questionable as well. So Devontae Harris was placed on injury reserve with his thigh injury on Monday, though.
All right, that brings us to 4 o'clock. Hello, everyone that has skipped ahead to the 4 o'clock games. If you want, we had some great conversations about potential head coaching moves during the 1 o'clock games and some other thoughts on the upcoming 2021 season. But I know you're here for the 4 o'clock games. So the Denver Broncos are kicking us off against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Broncos 24th, the Chargers 20th. The Chargers are favored by 3 in this one. And Neil, you're calling for the Monty upset special.
Adam and Eve on a raft, a cup of muck, and an upset special.
Yeah, absolutely. you guys are probably going to correct me, but I think this was a fairly close game first time round, and
it was 1 point. The Broncos won 31-30.
Yeah, as
yep,
I can
last
see,
second touchdown.
I can see a very similar game here. Two teams, and Herbert always had a terrific season, and there's hope there with the Chargers for the future. I'm still not 100% sure about Drew Lock. I think he shows flashes of being a really competent and good quarterback who you can take forward as your team develops. And other times he looks terrible, and I'm not sure how much of that's got to do with the offensive line and his inexperience. He's certainly got some decent targets out there, so I can see this being a really high scoring game, Jay, and probably one of those games you'd if you've nothing else to watch at the 4:00 slate that your team isn't playing, I'd be watching this game because it could be quite high scoring and some really crazy plays both offensively and defensively. It's Joey Bosa, isn't it? Is with them. Joey Bosa is back and playing really well. Always a great watch. And of course Herbert, Locke, Judy, all these guys, Noah Fant. It'll be an exciting game. So I'd recommend the listener to listen to this game if their team isn't playing at 4:00.
To highlight the craziness, the Broncos have a -18 takeaway giveaway ratio, 12 takeaways, 30 giveaways. That's just absolutely ridiculous.
It's great, isn't it?
That's just not good football.
No, it's not. Here's the other thing. So, I mean, we've talked about Anthony Lynn a few times, but I still think Anthony Lynn is a competent coach and still belongs in Los Angeles. I do still question his judgment on talent on his team. But I don't think I don't think people should be whispering for Anthony Lynn's job anymore. I think he belongs in LA for now.
Jay, do you remember the last head coach who we all laughed at on social media for his clock management issues and decision making in the fourth quarter under pressure? That was a guy called Andy Reid, and I'm not sure what happened to him, but I have a feeling he did quite well.
I think so. On the other side, I mean, the Broncos got hit with the injury bug quite a bit, but I also don't necessarily call this a disappointing season for the Broncos. There were a number of people at the preseason that were saying the Broncos were potential playoff contenders. I never saw it, but I do think that if they got some of those guys that they lost due to injury at the beginning of the season, they probably would have performed a little bit better this season. So I think the Broncos have an upward trajectory for 2021 as well.
Well, everybody expected, that was on the back of the predictions from all these know-it-all pundits that thought that their number one wideout, was going to be the number one rookie wideout in the NFL. And he's good. He's going to be good, but it has not had the effect on that team that everybody at the beginning of the season thought. At quarterback, I'm personally, what I've seen, I don't see him being anything other than he's a kiss your sister quarterback right now. He's shown a few things, but he's a 50-50 guy. He's way below where we expected him to be. I think there's a 50% chance he's gone. I think they've got to look elsewhere.
I think if you're a fan of either of these two teams, this season's not exactly the way you wanted it to end, but there's hope. I don't think you're the New York Jets. Let's put it that way.
No.
There's
Denver's
hope.
one of those teams that will be looking at the veteran quarterbacks who are available because honestly, I think a veteran quarterback will, at the minimum, make them an 8-8 team, and coaching can get them over the hump into the playoffs. But if they get, these veteran quarterbacks that we've been talking about who may be available at the end of the season, they get one of those guys, it changes everything on this team because, look, we play devil's advocate and say everything is as close to normal as possible come the beginning of next season. So everyone who decided to sit out is back. The guys you lost due to injury, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they're back. This defense is vastly improved just by the infusion of talent they missed this year. And the offense then only has to put up about 20 to 25 points a game. That's easily 8 to 10 wins with competent quarterback play.
And Von Miller.
Right.
I I agree. I think that there's enough blue chip talent in that team. They're just like the Chargers. There's going to be a couple of tweaks here, a couple of adds here, and there's enough with the starting. Obviously, the Chargers with a starting quarterback and with big upside. And I think that these guys could. You're right. They both could be a 10-6, 9-17 next year with the right moves.
The problem with the Chargers always is not just that they tend to get a lot of injuries, but they always tend to get their best players injured. It's not like the third string punter or the backup long snapper. It's always your star pass rusher or your
Derwin James.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know why it happens to the star players, but it's always the same.
Well, and to that point, before I make my pick official, my friend's fantasy team would like to thank Keenan Allen for nothing.
Yeah.
I agree with Neil's assessment of this game. I suspect it's going to be very similar to their previous game. Could come down to one score. And so my question to you, James, is where's Keenan Allen at?
As healthy as can be. The only charges showing up in the injury report for this week are linebackers Denzel Perriman, Emeka Egbule, and safety Nasir Adderley, along with offensive lineman Brian Balaga. But they're all listed as questionable. So, yeah.
All right. Well, if Keenan Allen to go, thanks for nothing for last week. But I will take the Los Angeles Chargers to win this game.
Yeah, likewise. And nothing here on the Broncos side as far as injuries.
All right. This game got flexed into 4:00 because the NFL said, hey, we need 4 games at 4:00. The Carolina Panthers are at the Washington football team. Washington football team favored by 2.5. Before we get to the off-field shenanigans, Washington can clinch its first division title and a playoff berth since 2015 with a win and a Giants loss or tie. So Neil, seen anything on the internet lately?
Yeah, clearly, like you guys, I'm sure you all enjoyed very much the Michael Jordan, The Last Dance documentary series, and in about 5 years' time, we're all going to be sitting down to watch Dwayne Haskins, the pole dance documentary series, and I'm sure that's going to be an absolute classic.
Now remember, it's not just there was no poles in the hotel room; it was a private show. They've changed that story. It was not in a strip joint.
I'm sure they changed it. Yes,
yeah, right. Private party, a private.
They are in Washington D.C., right? Things can get changed rather easily. I hear
that
in Washington D.C.
You can call it what you like, but we all know what happened there.
Yeah. I'd be worried. I wouldn't be worried about COVID with no mask if I'm in that scenario. I'd be worried about other diseases, wouldn't you?
Well, I'm just wondering what he licked in that room. But
all right.
Yeah, and Washington.
Keep it for your next game. The Eagles are coming up.
No. Actually, Neil, this is very poignant because Washington is the last team in the league that needs to have any sort of COVID outbreak whatsoever, due to what the head coach went through this summer with chemo treatment.
You got it, bro.
Washington's the last team that needs something with strippers involved in it.
Exactly.
Never mind.
You got a PR nightmare. You got a PR nightmare, and your coach just went through cancer.
For the last decade, strippers be damned. That playing around with this pandemic, and you have a head coach who basically is still recovering from cancer treatment.
Mm-hmm.
No,
if
James,
anyone in the organization is at risk, it's him. And
your
you're talking about.
Taken. But the bigger point is Washington at the beginning of the year got slammed with the biggest sex scandal on the face of the planet. And they went through all of these front office changes.
Been lingering to the beginning of this year.
But they went through all the front office changes this year. That story went big this year. And so the fact that your former starting quarterback is now in this particular situation, it's clear that he doesn't get it.
Yeah, I think there's clearly there's we mentioned it earlier on with a quarterback who had trouble between the ears, and this is clearly another quarterback who's got a problem between the ears. You all make really good points, James, with his cancer link to Rivera, which is massive, of course, and then of course the last thing this team needs is another scandal on top of just at the point when we were starting to get talked about for our on-field play and our playoff chances and the whole NFC East thing. Things were starting to look positive. You know, for Alex Smith, a great story. Developing young players like Gibson and McLaurin coming through, Chase Young. All of a sudden, it was football talk, and that was great. And now this Muppet goes and does something really, really, really stupid and completely thoughtless. Also, going to whatever it was, joint after a loss, which was a disappointing loss. That's not what you want your quarterback to be doing. You want your quarterback to be going home and studying a playbook a little bit more, or watching tape when you have a loss. You don't want to see pictures like that, or even if what he was doing was fine, which it wasn't. But even if it was fine, you want him concentrating on the next game, because he's there to set an example for the team, and that's watching the quarterback position.
Let's clarify that too. You want him watching the right videos.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And then that's right. He's watching a Dallas video, but unfortunately Debbie was in it.
Hey, Neil, can we just say this? Can we just summarize this by saying, if we were to have a Next Fan Up award show at the end of the year, this would get the dumbass trophy so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, quite right. I mean,
well, he's a finalist anyways. So.
It's
he's definitely a finalist. There's some other names on this list.
Yeah, but this is bad on so many levels. And so anyway, aside from that, Jay, we're now, and of course another bad side of it is we're facing the biggest game for this franchise in the last, when 2015 was the last playoff appearance.
Yep.
The biggest game for 5 years, where we're coming up against a 4-10 team. I think the Panthers are currently.
Yep.
Obviously Rivera's old team, but this is a chance. We win this game, and we know we're fairly sure the Ravens are going to beat the Giants, and that's all we need. Beat this 4-10 team and get into the playoffs, and that would just be great for all us fans of the Washington football team, and what even, you know, we go into the playoffs and we maybe lose to Seattle or the Rams as it stands at the moment we would play. I don't care if we lose that game. Just getting to the playoffs would be just fabulous after all these years of misery with Washington. So come on, let's get together and win this game. I think we can win this game. Smith is not taking first team reps this week. Haskins is taking the reps today for the team. Gibson looks like he probably still won't play. And McLaurin, he's not at practice today. Hopefully that's not injury related. So yeah, come on, we can do this. Chase Young can drag us to the playoffs. I certainly hope so.
Do you need the three guys that you just mentioned to win this game? Now, Antonio Gibson's been out for a couple weeks, but it does seem like they're missing something without him.
Oh, definitely. He's because he's, you know, one of the key things with running backs in the modern day game, which you guys know, is that your offense can perform much, much better if the defense doesn't know that when your guy lining up a running back can either run the ball or be a pass catcher. And if you've got that versatility with your running back, your starting running back, that's a great thing to play with in this league. And that's what Gibson is. He can, you don't know if it's going to be a pass or a run because he can do both equally well. So losing him, it's a blow. Do we need him to win this game? No. We're playing a 4-10 team. We should be having enough, certainly defensively, to mean the Panthers will be lucky to get double-figure points here. So we should be able to churn that out offensively, get at least 15 to 20 points to win the game. That's my hope. I think that's what will happen. I think we'll edge this game, maybe something like 20-10 or something, maybe a late touchdown to seal it and make the playoffs. So come on.
One last question on your football team. Who is your starting quarterback next year?
Starting quarterback next year, I believe, will be two options, Jay. I'm not sure. They'll either go for a veteran guy like Stafford or so and try and bring him in, or else they'll keep Smith on for that final year and have that sort of transition, like the Chiefs did with and the 49ers did with Smith. Let him start and bring a young guy in. Maybe take a second round quarterback and let him sit and play. I would love them to get Trey Lance because he's my favorite.
All right. Let's talk about that 4-10 team, the Carolina Panthers. Now, it's funny because the national discourse on this team is that this is a team with hope. This is a team on the up. To me, I don't see it that way. Teddy Two Gloves has not inspired me. 14 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 3,360 yards. I don't see the ray of hope the Carolina Panthers like I see with the Chargers and the Broncos. To me, the Panthers are a nice little story, but if they do this again next year, that is not good.
No, but they're missing the key ingredient, aren't they? And that is they need a young quarterback.
And they're not going to get.
I think they've looked okay.
No, the gloss is off, Teddy. The gloss is off.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be going to the draft, and that's what everybody down in Carolina is already saying. It started 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
They may be moving up in round one.
Yeah, it looks like they've set up the team to get itself ready for the arrival of a new quarterback. That's how I kind of see them.
Is this the best fit for like Justin Fields, a guy, a more mobile type quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be any of the top young quarterbacks. I think would be good because they've got an outstanding. If they keep Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator, that's a great sign for any young quarterback because he's really good.
Well, we already established Joe Brady's going to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, as much as I want to cape up
to go for any young quarterback.
Yeah, unfortunately, as much as I want to cape up for Teddy Bridgewater in this one, the last couple of games they've lost, he's not looked well, and they've not been throwing the ball vertical. Everything's been within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, quick outs, slants, dump offs to the backs, safety valves to the tight end, and something seems wrong with this offense. And, you know, I'm trying not to put it all on Teddy, but he's the one back there pulling the trigger. And I see guys running open on intermediate crossing routes that either he's not seeing or he just doesn't feel they're open, whatever the case may be. But there were points in the year when he was chucking it downfield and hitting guys in stride. And like I said, these last 2 to 3 weeks, for whatever reason, it's just not happening. Look, Doc and I have mentioned this before. This defense is playing as well as can be for pretty much no one with more than 4 or 5 years experience. There are a lot of first and second year players in this unit. And, you know, Chin has a right to be mentioned for defensive rookie of the year, but they're just not getting enough done on defense either. So as much as I would love Carolina to win this game because it helps my team out, I don't see how they pull it out unless Dwayne Haskins is the quarterback for Washington.
You're such a kiss ass, James. Oh, me and Doc have seen this before. Bloody hell.
Well, we've talked about this Carolina defense all year.
No, you have. All right, injuries on this one?
McCaffrey is listed as questionable. Reading into that what you will, 2 weeks left. I'm not sure he should play or if he wants to. Russell Okung, the tackle, is questionable. Defensive end Austin Larkin is also questionable. And cornerback Troy Pride is doubtful to play this week. For Washington, Alex Smith is questionable. Like Neil said, we don't know who's going to be given the start come Sunday, so keep an eye on that. Gibson is on the injury report, is questionable, along with linebackers Cole Holcomb and Kevin Pierre-Louis.
I was going to make a joke. I'm going to pass on it. The Philadelphia Eagles are at the Dallas Cowboys. It was going to be something about, getting it up, but never mind. The Eagles and the Cowboys are facing off in Dallas. The Eagles 22nd in the power rankings, the Cowboys 26th. Eagles are actually favored by 2 in this one. And James, I imagine that's because of your new starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, it's funny how a change at quarterback and wide receivers actually catching the ball. I don't know if anyone knows this, but despite the loss last week, every receiver on the roster caught at least one pass against Arizona. Every single one of them. Ward, Hightower, Jeffrey, Rager. Who else am I missing? And Fulgham. All 5 of them caught passes last week. All of them. And when Carson Wentz was the quarterback, those guys inexplicably weren't open.
All right, James, enough of that nonsense. Week one, at the start of the next season, who's your starting quarterback?
I don't know.
It's Jalen Hurts. It's not even at this point. It's not even a question.
Look, I know for most people outside looking in, it's no brainer. It's got to be Jalen Hurts, and maybe it's true. And I think the only thing helping out right now is the rumblings coming out that Carson Wentz is pouty because he doesn't want to be the backup going into next year. And my thing is, you don't have a choice in this situation because you've played like crap all year. Between holding the ball too long, taking sacks when you should be throwing it away, not running when there are openings. Like everything that's put Carson Wentz where he is right now as far as being the backup quarterback is his own doing. And he's the only one who doesn't see it. They can't, in all honesty, put him back on the field unless it's to tank. So, I mean, do I have sympathy for Carson Wentz at this point? No, mainly because since he was drafted, the Eagles have given him every opportunity to keep his starting job. You know, they made him the starter out of training camp pretty much the week before the season began because they traded away Sam Bradford. He gets hurt the next year on a Super Bowl run, and they go into the offseason saying he's going to be the starter when he's healthy. Even though they started Nick Foles for the first 2 to 3 weeks of that following season, when he was healthy, they immediately turned to Carson Wentz, gave him every opportunity to turn things around and play the way he did the year before. He didn't. Gets a back injury. They have to put Foles back in. And last year, he didn't play stellar last year, but whatever worked in the last 4 games of the season for him wasn't working in the beginning of this season. So, I mean, and don't get me wrong, it's not all him, because the coaching staff has been calling more running plays over the last 2 weeks. I still don't understand what that is. When you bring in the young quarterback, you want to run the ball more than opposed to your veteran. But whatever.
Hey, James, how about we interject here with a little word comedy absurdity? This was the greatest suggestion, not the greatest, but made me spit up my coffee. Have the Eagles trade Carson Wentz to Green Bay and a straight quarterback swap for Jordan Love. That gives the Eagles a QB combo of
Love hurts.
Love hurts. God. Then move the team 75 miles an hour, 70 miles north to Nazareth. So instead of a franchise, you have a 1970s rock song. I'll let myself out. Of course, Nazareth, the rock band, with a Scottish lead singer, my friend.
Dan Scott had to leave, unfortunately.
Born in Dunfermline. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to rail too much more in this game. Look, Hurts makes this offense better, period.
Yep.
He's actually running the ball on the read options instead of just constantly handing it off. He's keeping the defense honest to respect that so that there are openings for Sanders to run through. Everybody who can catch a pass in this offense seemingly is available to catch passes in this offense. Nothing's being forced to the 2 tight ends. You know, they're safety valves now. They're last resort options because he's getting outside the pocket and making stuff happen with his legs. And these are all things that Carson Wentz did in his first 2 years playing, and somehow that went away when he came back from that ACL injury. And I don't know if it's between the ears, a confidence thing, the coaches are putting too much on his shoulders, whatever it is. At this point, he cannot play quarterback for the rest of this season. He just can't. As far as Dallas goes, and this week, I don't know what to expect because we had our opportunities to win the game last week, but the secondary is shambles. And again, when Jalen Mills is your best secondary player, you have no secondary. So we're pretty much playing 7-on-11 on defense because I don't know why Jim Schwartz is hell-bent on one-on-one coverage with DeAndre Hopkins and a rookie cornerback who got no help. What did you think was going to happen? Hopkins went off for 150 yards receiving and the game-winning touchdown, by the way.
So the last time these two teams played at the beginning of November, Eagles won 23-9. Obviously, a few players have changed. No
Ben DiNucci this week.
Last week, the Cowboys put up 41 on those XFLers in San Francisco, Arizona. I mean, and this would be a question: are the Cowboys a better team without Ezekiel Elliott?
Yep.
No.
I don't know. I mean, Tony Pollard.
What a waste of money. Pollard is big, runs with power, elusiveness. Dump the contract, which they can't. I'm serious.
They just gave it to him.
They can't afford Zeke at that money with that kind of performance and a franchise tag. There's that that's 50% of the cap.
Yeah, and look, I take this year as an outlier year for Ezekiel Elliott. This is just not normal. And look, he was pretty much a star from the moment he touched the field week 1 of his rookie season. And he's had 1,000-yard campaigns for every time he's played an entire season, minus his positive drug tests, which cost him 4 games 1 year. And then last year, I think he had a couple of injuries where he missed several more games. But he was fully healthy this year. He got the money he wanted. And unfortunately, like a lot of players of years past, once they get paid that first year in that new contract,
yep,
it's like, why did we pay this guy? It's almost as if everything they did before was an anomaly and this looks like the norm. And I hope that's not the case with Ezekiel Elliott, because history has shown he's a stellar player, and this year is just a blip. And, that's not all on him. Now, the fumbling he's had this year, definitely his fault, because he's fumbled more times this year than his previous career combined. They have been shuffling things on the offensive line in Dallas. That'll probably something that'll get shored up going into next season. There's nothing you can do that now with 2 games left. The offensive line is what it is at this point of the year. And Andy Dalton just pretty much hasn't played the way they expect him to when they signed him. Because we all said going through the season, this is the best backup quarterback in the league. And if anything happens to the starter, then Dalton should be great in this offense, and it hasn't proven to be that. So,
well, he got COVID.
I mean,
COVID is apparently, it's funny. These guys lose a couple weeks due to COVID, but what really ends up happening is post their return, if they actually did have COVID, and Andy, I believe, actually did suffer symptoms from COVID, they actually suffer a little bit longer. The COVID fog, I think, is a real thing. So even these,
your quarterback in New England suffered that.
Yeah. So even these athletes that, keep their bodies in prime physical condition, and I'm not necessarily saying Andy Dalton keeps his body up there like DK Metcalf, but he's a professional athlete.
Nobody's DK Metcalf.
He's a professional athlete, and the COVID fog really kicks in. The other thing I'm going to bring up in particular with this game, and then we can move on, is Amari Cooper hasn't really shown up all that much this season, although he is still their leading wide receiver. Last week in that 41 point explosion, he only had 2 catches, but he does like playing against Philadelphia, James. But then again, I think every receiver likes playing against Philadelphia.
Pretty much. You look at the all-star talent we've played the last couple of weeks, even with Darius Slay, our top corner, on them, these wide receivers have gone off. So, injury reports here for the Cowboys include Ezekiel Elliott and Rashard Robinson, the corner, both listed as questionable. Leighton Vander Esch is doubtful. McCarthy doesn't anticipate him suiting up this week because of his high ankle sprain. Michael Gallup has a hip injury. Xavier Woods suffered a rib injury in that Sunday game, so he's questionable as well. For the Eagles, Darius Slay is out of concussion protocol, should be available, but Josh Sweat will be out this week, and Jalen Reagor has an ankle injury. He's questionable.
The Los Angeles Rams are at the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams are 13th in the power rankings after they lose miserably to the New York Jets. The Seahawks stay at 7, and they are favored by 1.5. Neil had to leave, has picked the Rams as his upset pick. And I will tell you, as I'm looking at some of the other stats here, the Rams have won 5 of their past 6 versus the Seahawks. They won earlier in November, 23-16 against the Seahawks. I mean, a loss to the Jets can do one of 2 things for your team. It can either A, wake your team up, or B, ruin your franchise for years. I don't think B is going to happen here with the Rams. I do think that as weird as this might sound, I think the Seattle game is their get right game. I think they can get right against Seattle, and I don't think calling it an upset is that big a deal. I'm actually going to go with the Rams, and I'm going to feel confident about it. James, you're going with Seattle.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm not going to trust nor pick a team to win another game this season that loses to the Jets.
Fair enough.
Last week was inexplicable, chaotic, crazy. Okay, look, first half we saw the Jets go into the locker room with what was it, 13, 17, nothing, halftime lead. You're thinking, all right, cool. The Jets got out their system with whatever energy surge they had in the first half. You know, the Rams will get right in the second half. They'll come back. They'll win this game 24, 27, whatever points in the second half. And they never got right in any phase of the game. I mean, Sam Darnold looked like Joe Montana. The defensive line for the Rams was non-existent. The defense for the Jets pretty much played lights out. I mean, it looked like the 85 Bears out there, the way they were just creating turnovers. I have nothing positive to say about the Rams at all.
Well, look at Seattle. Seattle's not lighting it up, though. Mr. MVP never got a first-place vote for MVP.
Okay, and Seattle, and look, hold on. And Seattle, with their worst defense, one of the worst defenses in the league, one of the worst passing defenses in the league, still limited the Washington football team's passing game, even with a backup quarterback. And backup quarterbacks have torched this secondary. Let's not forget that.
Hold on. Let me break down that sentence that you just said. The worst defense in the NFL kept the Washington football team, a 6-8 team, by the way, in check with a backup quarterback. Yeah, of course, that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah,
Jared
that's what they're
Goff
supposed to do, but they haven't done it all year. Hold on. There have been backup quarterbacks this season who have lit up that secondary. Let's not pretend that hasn't happened. Okay, they may have won those games, and they may have.
That's why I think the Rams are going to light up the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay, that's perfectly fine, but again, I don't trust an offense that just lost to the Jets. I'm sorry, I just can't do it.
Hey,
I can't trust a team that just lost to the Jets.
Goff is in decline, man. What is that? 100? There's I forget what the cap hit is, guys. Like $65 million cap hit next year. And he's playing like this. It's 17 TDs, 10 interceptions, but it's decline. There's an obvious decline there, and that franchise is going to be thinking, "What have we done? What did they do with Zeke's contract in Dallas? What did they do with Goff? This big money, the way to build a team, get a rookie quarterback, build around him, and not have to worry about that massive cap hit." And Jared Goff is not a $134 million man. I don't know what they're going to do, so he better pick it up. This could be a get-back game. So,
my notes here say that this should be a shootout. Goff averages 325.8 yards per game in his past 5 versus Seattle. Russell Wilson averages, I just had it here, looks for his 3rd in a row at home against the LA Rams with 3+ touchdowns and a 130+ rating. So, my stats say this should be a shootout.
It won't be. The last game was 20-16 or 23-16.
It was 23-15. Yeah, but that was the last game. I think this one could be a shootout, and I think the Rams will outshoot the Seattle Seahawks. Hey, like I said, the Jets' loss is either a wake up or it destroys your franchise, and I don't think it's going to destroy this franchise. I don't think Sean McVay is going to let that loss sit well with his team, and I think they're going to come out and they're going to punch
he
the
also
failed
to make halftime adjustments in a Super Bowl game that he still had a chance to win. So, no.
Fair enough, but this is also for first place in the NFC West. The Seahawks win and they clinch. The Rams win, and we got another week to go. So
the Seahawks are clinching.
I don't know. We'll see. What's the injury report look like?
Seahawks, Demarius Randall, the safety, offensive lineman Brandon Shell, and Phil Haynes are all listed as questionable. For the Rams, Juju Hughes, the safety, and Derek Moncrief, the linebacker, are both out. Cam Akers is also going to be out, it looks like.
All right, we finally made it to Sunday Night Football, and it's a doozy of a game.
Too bad Neil's not here for this one.
I know. It's the Tennessee Titans at the Green Bay Packers. The Titans are 4th in the power rankings. The Packers are 3rd. A potential Super Bowl preview. I will I will go out and say it. I said potential. It could happen. It won't, but it could.
If pigs could
not.
fly.
Titans can clinch a playoff berth with a win. Las Vegas loss Saturday or a Baltimore loss early in the day on Sunday. Tennessee can capture its first AFC South Division title since 2008 with a win and a Colts loss. Green Bay can nail down the NFC's number 1 seed and the conference's only first-round bye with a win combined with a Seattle loss or tie. Tennessee has generated at least 30 points and 420 or more yards of total offense in 5 consecutive games. I wish Neil was here because that was a good one. Because let me repeat it. That's 30 points and 420 or more yards in 5 consecutive games. Titans are one of 5 teams in history with such a streak. If they do it again on Sunday, they will become the first team in history with at least 30 points and 420 or more yards of total offense in 6 consecutive games. They're doing it on the back of Derrick Henry, who has recorded at least 100 rushing yards in 9 consecutive road games, the second longest streak in NFL history. With 100 yards on Sunday, he will match the NFL record held by Pro Football Hall of Famer Barry Sanders, who did 10 consecutive games from 96 to 97. There's a lot. I mean, I don't know why you guys don't say that this is a potential Super Bowl preview. I mean, the Titans, I think, are good enough to cause some problems in the AFC, and I think they're one of the teams that could beat the Kansas City Chiefs. The Packers are the best team in the NFC right now.
They are, Pod, but Tennessee's defense is now bottom 3 in the league in most quality stats. I mean, bottom 3. So they're going to have a shootout to beat teams like the Pack and the Chiefs. They're going to have to be firing on all cylinders, run the ball effectively, but they're never going to keep that at Patrick Mahomes. They're going to have to outscore him. And I just think, well, you know what I feel about Mahomes right now. He's just Superman until he gets injured. So,
well, they are number 1 in takeaway giveaway ratio with a plus 12. So that's not bottom 3 in that defensive statistic.
But overall, Aaron Rodgers has torched bad defenses, right? And this could be – I'd love to see a high-scoring game, wouldn't it? A track meet this Sunday night would be fantastic. Lots of scoring. Back and forth, back and forth. Who's got the ball last? I love games like that.
Well, I mean, to qualify that even some more – I mean, the Packers' defense is not that great. 24.2 points per game, 337.7 yards on defense. This easily could be a track meet.
It could. Yeah. It could also go the same way it went with their second matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, which is why I've locked this game for the Tennessee Titans.
I like that.
Lock of the week.
By the way, with all the changes in the teams that have led the most points per game this season, Green Bay for the longest time was the clubhouse leader with 31 points per game. But now the Titans are first, tied for first at least, 31.1 points per game.
Look, whichever team can stay balanced the longest is going to win this game. Doc's already talked about the weaknesses of both these defenses. I've been harping on the Packers defense all season because, again, if you can line up in base personnel, meaning anything with 2 or less wide receivers on the field, and smash mouth run the football at Green Bay, you have a great shot of winning the football game. Mm-hmm. That's what the Vikings did because they basically went 2 tight ends and a fullback on basically 50% of their plays the second time they played Green Bay. The Titans can line up and do the exact same thing against Green Bay. They just can't handle it. They don't hit their gaps. They're not always there to cover the cut back. They tend to over pursue to their detriment. If you're going to straight up pass, that's probably that's ideally what they want teams to do. But they don't have the defense to allow them to go up quickly 14-0 on every single team in the league. They're not playing Chicago. They're Tennessee.
Yeah, well, you speak of balance, and I speak of weather alert, gentlemen. PM snow showers 32 degrees is the high, 17 degrees will be the low. Derrick Henry in his quest for 2,000 on the year has to get over 160 yards in this game and the next. I like the Titans for sure. I guess this is an upset special, by the way, because Green Bay is favored by 3.5.
Adam and Eve on a raft, a cup of muck, and an upset special.
And again, cold weather, and I know Green Bay's at home, and they should be used to playing on that field in December. But think about those defensive players. And I'm not just talking about the DBs. I'm talking about that front seven, those linebackers. You think they want to be tackling Derrick Henry in a close game when he's constantly fed the ball in the fourth quarter?
Plus, he just continues to just make other players look less than him. He just dominates them.
You're not a man.
I mean, and heaven forbid he at any point in this game throw somebody else out of the club with a stiff arm.
If you ever watch when he runs through an A gap or a B gap, and if he makes it, if he's untouched in the first 3 yards, I would be crapping my pants if I'm under 270 pounds and I'm a linebacker or a strong safety. Oh my God. Him coming through the hole. Oh,
it's funny because I keep hearing like the old timers try and compare him to someone. You can't really compare him to Jim Brown. He's not, because Jim Brown was a little bit more of a physical back. He's definitely as physical as Jim Brown, but he's still got some elusiveness. And people are trying to do Earl Campbell, but Campbell wasn't as physical as Derrick Henry is. So Derrick Henry might be.
I'm sorry,
Derrick Henry
Earl Campbell, who ran through 5 Steelers and lost his jersey while putting his helmet in another Steeler's chest, wasn't physical?
Well, he was more elusive than physical.
You know who he's a lot like, who had one season maybe, like Natron Means. I was going to say Christian Okoye, but Natron Means, he reminds me like the big shoulders. I mean, he's got a bigger top half than a bottom half, right?
Yeah. He's
not a guy like, a weightlifter or cycling legs. Like some of Allaire out of Casey. Like he's a linebacker, upper body, and he can lower his helmet. And I hate to swing this back and segue to Kevin Green, but that's what offensive coordinators worried about with Kevin Green. First play, he'd stick his helmet square in your chest, and you'd remember him the whole game. He runs with that kind of, just awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Derrick Henry is fun to watch for sure. Now, he's a guy who got a big contract that is still living up to his price tag.
Yep. Absolutely.
What do we have for injuries in this one?
Not many. Corey Linsley, the center for the Packers, is designated to return from injury reserve. Jay Sternberger, the tight end, shows up on concussion protocol. Jamal Williams, the running back, has a thigh injury. Guard Simon Stepanek and linebacker Chris Barnes are both questionable for this game. On the Titans sideline, Jeff Swain, the tight end, Kenny Vaccaro, the safety, both show up as questionable. And that's all we have here.
That brings us to Monday Night Football.
Do we have to?
Hey, congratulations, everyone, for making it to this point. If you've listened to the whole show, I'm impressed. If you skipped ahead, I'm not as impressed, but thanks for skipping ahead at least. The Buffalo Bills are at the New England Patriots. The Bills, second in the power rankings. Man, when's the last time we said the Buffalo Bills were second in the NFL? That's impressive. The Patriots remain at 19. And I actually ranked them a little lower than 16. I said they are like the 16th team in the NFL, but they are kind of lower than that. Bills are favored in Foxborough. Beyond everything else that I said, the Bills are favored by a touchdown in Foxborough. Last week, Josh Allen became the first quarterback in NFL history with at least 8 rushing touchdowns in 3 consecutive seasons. Bills wide receiver Stephon Diggs leads the NFL with a franchise record 111 receptions, ranks 3rd in the league with 1,314 receiving yards. This season, 13 Buffalo players have caught at least 1 touchdown pass, which is tied for the most in NFL history. If you haven't won a division since 1995 and you have a chance to kick the bully while he's down, You knock him the F out. Bills win big in this one. And I don't think I'm not going to say the Patriots are quit. They have a head coach that would never allow that to happen. They have players, much like Matthew Stafford, that wouldn't allow that to happen. But I think the Bills are in a position right now where if they want to make a statement, yes, this is not the New England Patriots team of old, but this is the team you go out and you make a statement on, and you have the perfect opportunity to do it. And I think they're going to. So I'm going to take the Bills, and I'm going to take the Bills to win big.
Yeah, Jay, it's going to be fun, watching this game on Monday night. Jim Kelly.
That's not fun.
Thurman Thomas, Lofton, Reed, Don Beebe. I mean, those guys in the offense. Wait. Oh, sorry. 1995. Sorry, this is 2020. So yeah, the offense of the Bills should shred the secondary of the Patriots because your boy, Defensive Player of the Year from last year, he's out. He's done for the season.
I wouldn't say shred.
Okay. So with no Gilmore, who covers Diggs?
That'll be J.C. Jackson and Devin McCourty's job.
And who covers
so when
Beasley?
They're basically
that's Jonathan
around
Jones.
His ankles while he's running free, then what?
Stephon Diggs isn't running free on J.C. Jackson. Listen, I brought up J.C. Jackson earlier this season. I'll bring him up again. He's had a very up and down season, but there's been more ups than downs. He is definitely the future of the secondary in New England. J.C. Jackson is just fine. We like to call him just cover Jackson. As I mentioned, he's had a few down games this season, so his nickname is no longer appropriate, just cover Jackson. But J.C. Jackson is a fine young cornerback that I think – is there a drop-off from Stephon Gilmore? Yes. Is there a huge drop-off from Stephon Gilmore? No. So I do think J.C. Jackson will be just fine. And the game plan will obviously be to take out Stephon Diggs. Where the Bills are going to be most effective is running the ball and their tight ends. Tight ends against the Patriots this year is the way to do it. And I believe I saw Buffalo Rob in our Slack channel mention that Dawson Knox is actually coming on strong here as the season is ending. And I think if you are in any sort of fantasy competition, whether it be daily, regular, whatever, Dawson Knox is a guy, and especially in this game, I think Dawson Knox will have a nice big game. I think the Patriots are suffering from a lack of linebackers on their defense. They have young safeties right now. I don't know if Patrick Chung will be back next year or not. I do like where I see some of these players. I like the potential of some of these defensive players, but ultimately the Patriots are in full rebuild mode. They're in a position where they're not going to get one of those young guys in the draft at quarterback. So everything hinges on what they do at quarterback in the offseason. And if it's re-sign Cam Newton, my son and I have both already said, God help us, because we already know it won't be a good season. If
his arm's over, his arm's done. His arm is done, right?
It's terrible.
Nah,
he's got to engage every muscle in his body to throw it past 20 yards right now. The way he looks,
there's also no one to throw to, really.
Yeah, but still,
there's no one to throw to. But it does look laborious. Every time he tries to throw a pass, it's good word. It just looks like it's a struggle for him to get the ball.
You saw it at the end of last year too, Pod, in Carolina. It looks like he's just can't throw the ball with any effectiveness. So
yeah, and then
can we categorically say that this could be finally the turning of the tide? Sure, they won the division, but this is a statement game for that coaching staff in Buffalo, where I got the Bills right now, one of the only three teams that can probably beat the Kansas City Chiefs because they can fire on all levels. And if that quarterback's head is on straight, he's playing MVP level. It's going to have to be Belichick magic for them to stay within 2 touchdowns. Yeah, I picked the Bills, or I picked the pass. So.
Yeah, I don't see Belichick keeping them within 2 touchdowns in this one. Yeah. I think, like I said, I do think that this is where they need to make a statement. They have the perfect opportunity to do so. Am I going to call it the turning point? Mm-mm. As long as Bill Belichick is in Foxborough.
Yeah, and you get a quarterback next year, and all your players coming back. You're going to be fine. You're a 10-win team at least next year.
This team will come roaring back. So the Bills, the Bills are a great story this year, and they certainly will have a lot to prove again next season. But you also got to watch out for the up and coming Dolphins. Dolphins look like they're on the upswing, and of course, we can all still laugh at the Jets, which I call them the jest for a reason. But this game is a no-brainer, and the Patriots season is a no-brainer. And as I mentioned before, while I say we can laugh at the Jets, you can lock the Jets in Week 17 against New England, and I will be doing so. And that's not, and it has nothing to do with the talent level on the Jets versus the talent level of the Patriots. It's in the Patriots' best interest, long-term interest, to make sure the Jets get nowhere near picking Trevor Lawrence.
Interesting.
Injury report for this game. Buffalo Bills starting there. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs is questionable with a foot injury. Obviously, he'll play. So tell JC to step on that foot anytime he gets. Might help him. Safety Jaquan Johnson, defensive end AJ Espinoza, and cornerback Tre'Davious White also showing up as questionable for the game. For the Patriots, the only 2-3 names I see here. Well, we already know about Stephon Gilmore.
Damian Harris.
And the surgery.
How about Damian Harris? Damian Harris is the only other one that really matters.
Damian Harris and Dante Moncrief both show up as questionable with no description of their injuries.
Yeah, we don't care about Dante Moncrief, but Damian Harris, I think, talking about the offensive side of the ball, it's been a good find at the running back position. Sony Michel looked good last week, but they didn't use him. I still don't understand what the Patriots coaching staff is doing, because Sony Michel had a pretty good first half, and then he just disappeared. They never called for a run ever again until somewhere in the fourth quarter when the game was out of hand. And then all of a sudden Sony Michel looked good again. So I don't know what's going on there in New England, but I do know that Damian Harris is a good running back. He'll be solid. There's some talent on the offensive line. There's some concern that with David Andrews' contract being up, Joe Thuney's the franchise player, Shaq Mason getting a little bit older, that offensive line could be losing some of the talent. But I hope not. I think that's the place where you have to have a strong offensive line for any quarterback that you end up bringing in, especially a young one, and especially a veteran quarterback who can actually throw the ball, which Cam Newton cannot.
Do you know that as of this morning, New York is reviewing a plan to test and trace 6,700 fans at the Bills' first playoff game? I think they're going to want to keep the number 2 seed, play the Dolphins potentially. So there's plenty of motivation there beyond just the get the monkey off their back with Belichick. So
it's a little far out for the forecast, but the weather doesn't look bad. 47 degrees is the current projected high. 31 is the low. That's downright balmy for Massachusetts this time of year.
Yeah.
Only clouds, no precipitation currently forecasted for Monday Night Football. By the way, breaking news, not really, but Juju Smith-Schuster says in light of recent developments, he will no longer be doing his TikTok dances on opposing teams.
Hangs up his dancing shoes.
What a surprise. What a surprise.
Somebody got to sit down.
But what's weird to me about all that, not to make this podcast any longer, but Mike Tomlin, I literally watched him in his press conference when asked the question, say he was going to address it, but he wasn't going to necessarily shut it down. So I don't understand, where is the upside to having a press conference and saying that publicly? Like, publicly, you want to give your fans the idea that you are in control, that you are the head coach, not that you're necessarily ruling with an iron fist, but that your team will fall in line. You will be the leader of this team, and you're going to make right by the situation. to me, it's mind blowing that he came out and said that. And now Juju Smith-Schuster comes out and says, I won't do this. I understand that it's bad for my team, but it doesn't sound like he got that message from his coach. It sounds like he got that message from everybody else talking about it all week long.
Yeah. That's where I thought the coach would have a problem with it. Huh?
You know, I look at the situation in Pittsburgh, and unfortunately, this is one of those things where the coach who specializes on one side of the ball tends to pay attention more so to that side of the ball than the other. And remember, Tomlin was a former defensive coordinator. I think he spends more time with the defense than the offense, because this isn't the first time he's had offensive players, you know, do things that have rubbed either opposition, fans, the public the wrong way. You know, whether it's Juju, formerly Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, you know, Ben Roethlisberger at points. It's always someone on the offensive side of the ball when we talk about what is Tomlin doing about this. And I don't think he has much dealings with the offensive side of the ball outside of the offensive coordinator and, you know, expecting him to get this offense going and putting points on the board. I don't think he's hands-on with them as much as he is with his defensive players, because it doesn't seem that way just based on his tenure there in Pittsburgh, that you seem to have these instances with players in Pittsburgh and they're all on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
You know, think about most famously before he was jettisoned from Pittsburgh, Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
You know, after they won a playoff game and they were going to play the Steelers the next week, he's filming the post-game whatever on Facebook.
Yep.
And catching the entire audio from Mike Tomlin, which, I mean, everyone says that Patriot players use that as fodder, whatever, because of the words that Tomlin used. That's locker room talk that every team uses. That's not privy for public consumption.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. So, I mean,
you're right. It's a trend, eh? You're right. So, remember the way he reacted to Brown sitting out that last game, playoff contention? Yep. Remember? Well, play with who we got to play with. You know, it's a head scratching thing. You're right.
I don't know what it is there about those offensive players that I don't know if managed somewhere in front office management is giving them, quote, the pass or whatever like that. But it doesn't seem like Tomlin, I don't want to say he doesn't have complete control of the team, but star players in the offense are allowed to get away with things that he can't counter. And if that's management doing that, then they're hindering what, you know, his overall voice of the team, because you can clearly see his personality play out through the players on defense. You just don't see it on offense.
By the way, again, not to make this podcast any longer, but a couple of other interesting things to point out with that Patriots-Bills matchup. Taking out the win by the Bills back in November, Patriots had won the previous 7 times against the Bills. 7 straight. That's 3.5 years of dominance over the Bills. Sean McDermott, that was his first time beating the Patriots. He's 1-6 against New England. Bill Belichick is 35-7 versus the Bills. And then one last note here. Again, we rarely talk special teams, and we certainly rarely ever talk about punting, if ever. But Corey Bojorquez, the Bills punter, is actually formerly of the New England Patriots. He leads the league in punt average at 50.1. However, his net is only 43.3, meaning he is the literal definition of outkicking your coverage. Whereas Jake Bailey, the man who forced Corey Bojorquez off of the New England Patriots team, leads the league in net average at 45.1. Just one of those little notes of Bill Belichick's brilliance. You can have the biggest punting leg all you want, but if you're letting the guy return the ball at least 7 yards every single time, well, then you're not really doing me all that much good. Just saying. Anyway, and that's why I don't necessarily think the Bills, this will be a turning point game, but it is an opportunity for the Bills to make a statement. There you go. We've made lots of statements for 2.5 hours, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I encourage you to use the time codes in the show notes or the chapter markers on our Spreaker link. It's probably the best way to listen to this podcast And we'll be here again for week 17. James and I will continue to provide you with post-game coverage on Tuesdays, all through the playoffs.
I might be crying on Tuesday.
Well, we're still gonna provide you with at least 2 shows a week from now up until the Super Bowl. Although, are they taking a week off this year between the conference championships and the Super Bowl?
So far,
yeah.
So far,
I mean, they really don't
normally when they play the Pro Bowl.
Well, we didn't even talk about the Pro Bowl. No reason to. I don't understand this whole concept of the Pro Bowl will be different this year, because you said you're not playing it. So I don't understand what you're talking about.
Pro Bowl's been a joke for 20 years, man. I can tell you a Buffalo Bill that I know for a fact made the Pro Bowl 3 years in a row. It's because of the size of his bar tab and how many drinks he bought for 50 other players. That's the only reasons he made the Pro Bowl. Drop it. That's it. Boys, to both of you, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and remember, your body is not a temple. It's an amusement park during the holidays. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride. Eat something fattening. Hey, cook, man. We got 4 days of football. Cook something, grab one of those recipes, and enjoy it. And have a delicious holiday and the best of both your families.
Same to you, Doc. Same to you, James. Same to you, Neil, wherever you are. Merry Christmas, everybody. Day early and an extra half an hour of content. Hope you enjoy. There you have it.
Dear friends and colleagues, saying goodbye is never easy. I believe we can all feel proud of what we have done together. And through it all, you have maintained your professionalism and commitment and remained true to the spirit of the Charter. That principle.
We go out, we hit people in the mouth.